Welcome back to Hearthstone Global Games. I have reclaimed my rightful chair, and next to me is Sottle as always. So we're going to be bringing you this match. Falcon's gone for a very short break while we deal with this one, and it's going to be France versus Malaysia. What?
Looking for your name on that chair somewhere.
Oh, it's on there.
Oh, okay.
It's on there.
Right.
It's going to be France versus Malaysia coming up next, and this is going to be a good one because France is one of the sort of highlight teams, I would say. If you're going to talk global Hearthstone and country-based Hearthstone, France kind of goes up there in terms of it's got pretty much its own community that is very focused in on itself. Right. It runs its own set of tournaments. It has its own squad of like French-specific streamers that all stream on the same Twitch channel, for example. So it's just very much like, if you're going to name a few Hearthstone strong countries, you'll be like, oh, France is like one of the big ones.
Yeah, and I think, you know, the insular community thing is definitely a good point. You know, you mentioned the Twitch channels. There's two or three really, right? There's like the Millennium channel, the Armor channel, and then
the
like Hearthstone FR, and they, you know, all just seem to be running 24/7 with someone on there to like 2 or 3K viewers at least at all times. So definitely a very dedicated and ample viewing community, but they do seem to be very, very insular. You know, just speak their own language. They keep it to themselves. They build a massive community around community figures like Talk, for example, who we got to hang out with, filming that wonderful cringe video that you get brought into the proceedings with.
Don't even know what you're talking about. So that was a highlight of my acting career.
Yeah.
So also Malaysia, I've been there.
Yeah, you have. I have not. Yes. Score one for Raven.
We found somewhere in the world that I've been. Malaysia was absolutely awesome to go to. I got to meet some of these players. The main one for me, at least, was being Chunga, who was actually my pick for last winter playoffs as well. Very, very strong player, especially within his scene. So, you know, the Southeast Asia scene in general, played at multiple majors and placed, I think, 4th, 3rd, 2nd, and 1st, I think.
Nice.
So
the Grand Slam.
Exactly. And these majors aren't, you know, like, oh, 30 people rock up. There's like hundreds of people play. It's like, for example, like similar to DreamHack format. So it's not as if it's an easy tournament to rock through. He consistently gets top spots. Looking forward to seeing him play. But already, Talk kicking it off for France versus Gilgamesh is a team best of 5. With the first team to 3 wins will take the series. Each player brings 2 classes to the board, but can only choose one of them to play against one of their opponents. Kicking off Warrior versus Rogue. We have talked a lot about Rogue today. I feel like it's on the upswing this week.
That's a really interesting pick there as well. Warrior and Druid paired together, so potential of Pirate Warrior and potential of Aggro Druid between those 2 classes, and then you pick Rogue into that. It's kind of a little bit surprising. Of course, the flip side of that is that you could also be looking at Taunt Warrior and Jade Druid, in which case, hell yeah, give me some Quest Rogue. But it always seems dangerous to pick Rogue in this format, because there's always that threat of just an aggro deck. Like, most classes seem to have an aggro deck available to them that can just run a train on Rogue.
If I'm honest, I think they've just took a 50-50, because the way the teams would pair classes, you're probably not going to bring aggro Druid and Pirate Warrior, right? Probably not.
Right.
So then you say, well, yes, they could both be control, or they both have control archetypes, or they could both have aggro archetypes. They're probably going to be one each, so I'll just pick Quest Rogue and cross fingers, hope we get the control. If we don't, we have to just make the best of it in the aggro matchup. It sounds like a very wishy-washy tactic, but in all honesty, when you're picking blind into someone's classes, you kind of have to go with that sometimes.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And I think the other pick available for Malaysia was Warrior. So, you know, you're dealing with 2 out of the 4 of Quest Warrior, Pirate Warrior, Aggro Druid, Jade Druid, and you have either Pirate Warrior or Quest Warrior available to you. So there's a good chance that's like 50% bad matchups for your deck anyway. You know, if it's
or a mirror,
right?
Which is
if it's Pirate Warrior, you can run into Pirate Warrior, which is, you know, a mirror. You run into Quest Warrior, which is bad for you. You run into Jade Druid, which is bad for you. You run into Aggro Druid, which is dependent on techs like Galactic Crawlers, that kind of thing.
But not easy,
right?
Even if it's not teched, it's still not straightforward.
Right, and then obviously if you've got the Quest Warrior on Malaysia's side, you can run that into Jade Druid, and that's potentially a mess for you. There's the Quest Warrior Mirror. Of course, you've got the then favoured matchups against the aggro deck. So it does seem like the class pairing as a whole of Rogue and Warrior together actually has some holes in it that, you know, the pair that they've run into is kind of being exposed. But either way, we see that it is the Pirate Warrior coming out, and it is the Quest Rogue from Gilgamesh. So yeah, this Rogue Warrior pairing for Malaysia has not worked out too well for them.
Not at all. The only way it'll work out, I feel, is if they can start doing some freezing shenanigans, because there are some games I've played of this matchup where when your opponent, or you or your opponent as the rogue, has Glacial Shard and can repeat bounce, if they gain one turn of you not being able to attack, sometimes that's enough to proc the quest and then game, because you might be a pretty aggressive deck in the form of Pirate Warrior, but charging 5/5s is something you can't really do much about.
It's a very good point, but this is the nature of a bad matchup, which this is like, yes, there are routes in which you can win the game, but on average your opponent just beats you up.
You need exactly that, yeah, of course, yeah.
There's other outs he can have where obviously the Tar Creeper or Tovil Stone Shaper tech that we've seen could do some work for you. There's also, if you manage to get the quest done, there's 5/5 taunts from Bilefin Tidehunter. There's also Galacca Crawlers, which we sometimes see in this deck when pirates are an expectation, just to be able to bounce that and eat some pirates. But South Sea Deckhand, it's a quick quest, if nothing else, but it's not going to do a great deal in terms of dealing with the board state. I think with this hand, the correct line is to Coin Dagger, because it doesn't change the clock on when your quest goes off, and it most efficiently takes damage off the board over the next few turns.
Yeah, the idea is killing those 2 minions that you can already see are there. It's not like, well, I hope my second charge gets something. It's like, well, no, you will just kill them off, then have the benefit of your own patches, and can still bounce efficiently, as you said, to get there on time. But yeah, speaking of the crawlers and the techs in general, we just saw Korea play Quest Warrior with both crabs involved. So I was talking about Quest Rogue in general and the fact that you can just drop in a few tech cards as long as they're cheap enough, because it doesn't really change most of the deck a lot of the time either. As long as they're cheap, you can bounce them. Whether the bounce is whether the bounce is something like Bilefin, where you get an extra minion, which is crazy, or it does nothing, but it could win you the game. You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of room in the rogue list for stuff like this, which is why we see there's room for Tolve Stone Shaper, for Tar Creeper, because there's just slots in that deck that can make you win these matchups.
Not the most explosive Pirate Warrior start you've ever seen. South Sea Deckhand, not quite as good as Nazos First Mate. Bloodsail Corsair coming down unactivated, not ideal either. So there's a little bit of time here for Malaysia to set up, and honestly, a little bit of time is pretty much all they need in this position. And now, having drawn the Stone Tusk Boar, there's another decision point to be made here about if they go off with South Sea Deckhand, which is just a slightly better minion to be to activate your quest with, because you at least get to do something with the patches that gets pulled in the meantime. But since you draw Stone Tusk Boar, you can choose to go off with that instead and leave the patches in your deck potentially for your quest turn. So you can summon 10/10 worth of charge straight afterwards with the first deckhand that you drop.
Yeah, it's a tough call. I struggle to ignore the fact that deckhand just clears this board, which is something you really want to do. You've seen they've got a bad opening, right? You cash in on that straight away and say, okay, wipe your board. You can still play the quest and then use deckhand to start proccing. Or even if you don't end up using it, you're not overcommitting, right? You can use any other minion you draw. So I do really, really like this play. Clear off the pirates, be done with it.
Crucially as well, he has 2 deckhands available to him, which is actually important because of the way the curve works. He Coin Dagger on 1, which means to get his quest done, he needed to play quest this turn. So he could go quest deckhand, throw away his deckhand, that's fine. He couldn't go quest Stone Tusk Boar, because that's his one and only Stone Tusk Boar, and then he couldn't start bouncing it. He would have had to use the Shadow Step to bring it back to the hand. That makes the whole thing just a lot more transparent.
Okay, now I'm feeling just Glacial Shard, Brewmaster.
Well, I mean...
You've already got Shadow Step, you've still got plenty of bounce in the deck, and you just buy more turns. You still...
Your quest isn't done at that point, though. If you go with the Shard route, you need to find another answer to end the quest. And if you keep going with deckhand, you've got everything you need, because you've played one deckhand already. It's actually a pretty tough decision in this spot.
It's really hard, because just repeat bouncing the Shard is just so powerful. You just stop the Pirate Warrior doing anything for 2 turns. So that might be enough time to buy, to negate, the fact that you're not getting your quest done as quickly.
Yeah. So if he goes deckhand bounce now, then he has to spend 3 mana, 4 mana in total, and then 5 more for the quest. So that's 9 mana in total, so we can get it done over turn 4 and turn 5, which is actually still a little bit slow, considering that there is a frothing on board, potentially be... Oh my god, that draw. That draw has made this a much, much bigger problem than it was previously. First mate into Cultist might just put the hurting on Malaysia quick enough here. That Glacial Shard is in hand again, of course, but remember, now if they bail out to start bouncing Shard, they've made a mess of it. So they are committed to the deckhand line. It looks like Shard is probably going to be a one-off in this position. So it can stall that frothing for 1 turn, but then unless additional bounces or vanishes are picked up from this point, that frothing is going to start connecting very, very soon.
Yeah, it's a big worry. There's nothing really in the deck. The deck doesn't run Eviscerates anymore. It literally has to be a 5/5 that kills the frothing and deals with it, or you just kill your opponent quicker. But this is just not looking nice at all. Even the Glacial Shard, there's 0 chance of it living if you don't bounce it, which means you get that 1 turn and that is it. And you're freezing it on a 3-turn, potentially, you know, a 4 to 5, because you're just not going to play like 5 minions this turn to trade into. Which is the same as freezing the Cultist to a certain extent. Do you know what I mean? Like the Shard doesn't get as much value as it could do later on.
So if Deckhand comes down here, he can Shadow Step it back to his hand to get it in his hand for 0. And then essentially just play the other minions, play Novice Engineer and Shard the Frothing. And then that way, at least he has, he can play Deckhand for 0 next turn, then play the Quest for 5 and have Deckhand to charge. The problem with that is that it involves getting a dagger up in the meantime. So you'd have to forego the Novice Engineer and just go Shard, Deckhand, Shadow Step this turn to make that happen, which is the play that we are going to end up with.
Yeah, you need that dagger live if Deckhand's you procker. You need to get it on straight away. The charge is going to be vital in dealing with the Frothing Berserker. So there goes the Shadow Step. I imagine this Deckhand is going to be used to kill the Frothing. I don't think you can let that live 1 more turn than you have to.
Ooh. Savagery from the green skin as well. This has actually become a core card these days. It's actually in more lists than it isn't, which is kind of unusual.
Hoy has it in his playoff lists for this weekend.
I would suspect a lot of people do.
I was going to say, only because I happened to see his list earlier on, but yeah, he has it in his list, and again, Hoy's not someone who would do stuff for show or anything. Like, no, he brings good stuff, so...
I've never heard of him building shows decks for him. Yeah.
Yeah, so Greenskin, as you said, is becoming more and more popular. And I think we discussed it even not last week, of course, but the week before of Greenskin versus Naga. They're both similar cards, except that 1 extra durability for 1 mana can just win you games out of nowhere. It's actually incredible.
The weapon buffs come down on a single durability so often, just because, like, you know, a weapon gets played and then it gets used for board control straight away. So if it's coming down on 1 durability, Naga adds 1 damage to any given weapon if it has 1 durability.
4 mana 5/4 deal 1.
Right, and if that weapon is an Arcanite Reaper, then Greenskin is adding 7 damage to that 1 weapon. Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah.
I'd probably pick the 7. Yeah, absolutely crazy. But now there's a second bounce in hand for Team Malaysia. Not going to be able to play this turn, of course, as I think this just always has to be Deckhand Quest, whichever way you slice it. But going forward next turn, good to have bounces with either the Engineer or the Boar to try and get multiple trades, maybe into the Cultist, then into the Greenskin.
Yeah, the Shard being gone here is so disappointing because there's a play that you can make against Pirate Warrior where going into your quest turn, you actually just play every single other card in your hand first. And you know, because everything in the Rogue deck is so cheap, you're doing this on turn 5, turn 6. So you just get 4 or 5 other minions into play. And you say, okay, you know what, you can hit me for 1 turn. But whatever you do, at least 2 or 3 of these minions are going to live. Yeah. And then next turn...
Then I mean business.
Then next turn I throw out the quest. And it's, you know, I start to crush you. But there's so much damage in play here that the only way you could realistically make that happen is if you were playing Glacial Shards. Yeah. And the Glacial Shard has gone, and just a little bit too early for that Gadgetzan Ferryman to get any value out.
Yeah, because even then, imagine just like Shard Ferryman, Shard Hero Power even, or just Novice Engineer. You actually look at a reasonable turn, and the frustration there is the Frothing got big enough to kill the Deckhand as well. There is no value trades. Well, a 1-drop into a 3-drop, not a bad value trade, but you know what I mean. There is no repeat trades from this Deckhand possible, even as a 5/5. So already Malaysia pushed to 6 health, and frankly, I cannot see a way out of this. Grimy Gadgeting. What are you doing in this deck?
Yeah, classic card. I think Life Coach was one of the first people to really start playing this, like way back in the day.
Especially with Naga as well.
Right, yeah. Naga Corsair was actually a Life Coach innovation as well, that's right. But
Rip.
We miss you!
Come back.
I do love me some Life
I mean, he is going to come back. He plays for Germany.
He does play for Germany, yeah.
Firefly, nice card against Pirate Warrior. 6 turns ago. Smart moves indeed. Gilgamesh is going to concede Talk. So emotive and so happy about getting that win. Is this like a Mexican wave to himself?
I wonder what they call that in France, because different countries tend to have like different things that they apply it to. Yeah, a French lead. So yeah, I was going to say Talk is doing a Mexican wave, and then realize that all the various nationalities watching us will probably have a different name for that action.
Probably, but he did it not on his own. He was on comms with his. We'll join him. So on comms with his team. So it's a group effort. But Talk, as you can see, every single week we've seen him play. Very, very visually happy and motive about getting those wins, and just as bad when he loses as well. A need on the Warlock and Lala Song on the Druid. So this is the one of the matchups we saw last week where Warlock took a game, and to be honest, I could see it happening again. How do you think because I'll be honest, I've just not played this, but the Zoo versus the Aggro Druid would line up?
Versus Aggro Druid? I think Aggro Druid is a big favorite. A big favorite. And they're just able to spew out too many bodies over turn 1 to 3, which is where the game is won and lost. First deck in that matchup that gets early board control is going to win. And the trick against Zoo has always not been how many stats can I play, it's how many bodies can I play, right? Like if Zoo,
you gain benefit from buffs.
Right, if Zoo only just has 1 Flame Imp in play and you can generate 3 1/1s, that's a nightmare for them to deal with because they've only got this 1 Flame Imp. Like, yes, they can slap a Direwolf Alpha on it or whatever else.
Number of attacks,
but it's still only able to deal with 1 minion. And when you're a Druid and you can just spew out Firefly, Innovate, whatever else on turn 1 or 2, or just double innovate Finger or whatever madness that you have.
Well, we saw the Druid match last series, which was I think the fastest game in HGG I've seen. It was turn 4 concede, and it went very quickly as well.
That wasn't even like particularly disgusting aggro.
No, it was just fast.
That was just one drop, Mark of the Lotus, and then just go from there. Yeah. Like that's just standard Druid stuff. That's just what they're aiming to do. So yeah, Zoo just can't really challenge that kind of stuff. I think the more interesting matchup is Zoo versus Jade Druid. I think that's actually closer. We saw Jade Druid getting absolutely crushed last week by Zoo, but I actually don't think that matchup is one-sided at all. I think Jade Druid can definitely get some
Zoo
work done.
did old school Zoo things in that match.
Right.
Like it very quickly started to build at the ball. Summon came down as well, awkward to deal with. But in fact, this is going to be the Aggro Druid, so let's see if Lala Song can even this up. Malaysia versus France going on now into game 2. There is the Mark of the Lotus. There is the Firefly as well. And I believe Mark of the Lotus is often a keep in this kind of opening hand when you have at least multiple minions to play afterwards.
Yeah, top 3 highest win rate cards I think in the opening hand, Mark of the Lotus, but it's it's matchup considerate as well. And you do want to be able to buff your minions, of course you do. That's what this deck just aims to do in general. But like I said, most importantly, you just need to be able to consistently flood the board with minions, and that's just an extra card drawn now, Mark of Yasharaj. That's not really the kind of thing that he's looking for. Yeah,
I think the Mark of the Lotus in this matchup was kept because the other card was Firefly, right? You have 2 minions in one here, so it's already worthwhile. Whereas looking at France and only its opening hand, Flame Imp, Villager, Voidwalker. Okay, on the coin as well, means that you can battle for board just as quickly as Druid can early on.
And if this matchup is going to be won by the Zoo, Possessed Villager is one of the huge tools to get it done, because it's one of the few cards left now for Zoo that isn't just an individual body, which is one of the reasons why just Zoo isn't really that powerful anymore. It doesn't have super efficient Death Rattle minions going for it anymore. Possessed Villager is the one thing that can do that. You used to look at Imp Gang Boss being the big breaker in board aggro mirrors, right? When people were trying to get a grip on the board by turn 3.
Imp Gang Boss GG.
Right. If you had Imp Gang Boss in your opening hand, like that just doesn't lose. It's just so obnoxious for any other deck to deal with. But now that's not there. Possessed Villager is kind of your best alternative into kind of creating these awkward early game board states that can't be dealt with.
Yeah, we've seen some power come from the new egg when we've seen Zoo, but that is so late. Turn 3 to play, turn 4 to try and either buff it or kill it off with a Pterodax as well. You know, like, that is very, very late on. When it happens, it's pretty good, you know, and you've got some big beefy minions, but against, you know, aggro druid as well, I imagine that is far, far too slow.
So, new plan now, more likely than not for Malaysia. I mentioned, you know, plan A for how Aggro Druid wins this matchup, which is just to overflood the zoo in the early game. That plan probably isn't going to come to fruition with this hand. He's going to run out of minions fairly quickly. So the new plan is just keep things relatively even, maintain parity, and then play Living Mana on turn 5.
PogChamp.
Yeah.
Yeah, Living Mana... I still can't wrap my head around this card. It is so good.
Neither can D2.
No, that's true. It is so good.
Revenge! All right, we're good. We're even.
The power of this card really is the fact that it's one card to me. One card, X amount of minions is incredible, right? Already we can see, well, he's drawn the Living Mana. So now, fight for the board until Living Mana happens. One card, you almost fill the board, and your opponent then has to just deal with them. And Zood can't really deal with a board that wide unless they're so far ahead anyway that it doesn't even matter, and then the Zood's already won.
This is where you're going to start to see Possessed Villagers just being very, very irritating, especially with that Councilman pickup to follow them up. There's a good chance that Councilman can become a huge threat on turn 3 with the Possessed Villagers trading into things. So I think I would like to see both villagers come down here, saving the Bloodsail and presumably Patches to come out after the Councilman. That way there is, you know, between those 3 1-drops, that is upwards of 4 buffs to your Darkshire Councilman.
Just play a 5/5 pretty much on turn 4, so that can attack. Yeah, definitely not too bad. And Councilman, there's not really a good way for Druid to deal with it, aggro or Jade, to be completely honest. I guess Feral Rage and Jade Druid with the hero power is clean, but also a lot of mana. And yeah, like, let's see if these Possessed Villagers get the work done. Still 2 more turns away from the big Living Mana turn.
Yeah, and he's run into exactly that kind of spot I said he didn't want to be in, with spells in hand and not minions. You need to just keep flooding in this matchup. Just try and generate more minions than your opponent, and it's just not run into the hand that he needs. And I confess, this is just thinking out loud because I don't have nearly enough matchup experience in this matchup against Zoo.
Don't think anyone has.
Who does these days? But I said, you know, Mark of the Lotus, one of the highest win rate cards in the deck when kept, but is it correct in this matchup? Because, you know, your 1/2s and 2/2s and etc. are going to do the job for trading just fine. It's just whether, you know, you get this kind of hand that's just incredibly awkward and filled with spells that don't really do anything.
Yeah. I do like this turn, though, from Team Malaysia. Just getting the Flame Elemental onto the board and just taking down a villager. Yes, you know, we can see this Councilman that could get buffed, and turn 3 Councilman, not too much of a surprise, but also just start chipping away. Suddenly Defender Vargas could be a nightmare. You know, even just getting good trades with these minions is what they're pretty much built for. Could just be a problem in general. So start chipping away. You don't need the Direwolf Alpha to just die to the villagers. You can use that a little bit later on.
Still looks like a pretty clean Councilman turn to me. Less than ideal because of Malaysia, as you said, taking the initiative to hero power out one of the 1/1 death rattles. Still looking far more appealing than anything else he's got going for him right now.
Yeah, Direwolf Alpha into Mark of Yashraj might not look fantastic for Team Malaysia this turn coming up, but it does cycle a card and puts a bit of a, you know, a big buffing minion on the board ready for Living Mana next turn. I think it might be his best option. Now with the Crab, though, he could go Wolf Crab Mark if he really wanted to, but I feel like with Living Mana, it's just not
Wolf Crab
enough.
Lotus, you mean, right? Careful, there's 2 marks in here.
Oh, sorry,
right?
Mark of the Lotus.
Yeah.
I apologize, yeah. You know what I meant, guys. I can count mana sometimes. Yeah, so you could go a little bit wider with 2 minions, but I just think the 4/4 might just be better.
The 4/4 will get traded by Councilman, right? Like, you expect that to happen, making that play.
Yeah. Then your Living Mana just kills Councilman almost no matter what, right?
So then your goal is you don't have 5 minions in play, you probably have, let's say, 4, and then I Living Mana for 5 2/2s that trade out your board and we start the game again, right? Like,
Pretty
that's
much,
what you're
yeah. And you do have Mark of the Lotus for after Living Mana as well, so any that survive, you can either make trades stronger or just make trades really good for you.
It's actually a kind of awful
yeah,
draw.
it's like just this card is really good when you have a random 1/1 on the board. Maybe not when there's a Direwolf Alpha as a 4/4.
If it still had the Death Rattle, that would be beautiful.
Yeah.
Just eat that thing alive and buff your Councilman up to 4 in the process. But that Direwolf is looking like a very annoying prospect right now.
I think I like the Pterodax regardless. Taunt, health, Divine Shield. There's a lot of cards that you can use to kind of negate the power of this direwolf. I wouldn't mind Taunt at all. Your Councilman can look very, very good in a few turns, especially with that Corsair still in hand without patches being drawn from the deck yet. And I generally don't think you need to go Wind Fury plus attack or anything too crazy. You need to just win the board in this matchup. Second Adapt, should I say, coming out now. 5/5 Taunt. Reasonable.
So this is going to have to be the other cards that aren't Living Mana now, because Living Mana is just very, very awkward going into this potential 5/5. You then give your opponent a guaranteed value trade into the Wolf next turn, so it looks like Firefly, Flame Elemental, Hungry Crab, Mark of the Lotus is probably your best bet in this position.
Unfortunately, I think I agree. You just can't afford to let Zoo, which shouldn't be good, get value trades, because that's what makes it good. Like, that's the key problem. We can see, of course, Doomguard as an option next turn, or Bloodsail Corsair. Oh, wow. Is this just relying on Living Mana a bit too much? We talk a lot about how powerful this card is, but it's not just a win, you know what I mean? Like, you don't just play it and win a lot of the time. Well, maybe a lot of the time you do, actually, but...
It's not
like a bit too risky with a Councilman behind the Pterodactyl.
So it's not just relying on the Living Mana, it's relying on the fact that he has Mark of the Lotus follow-up, right? So even considering, that's the worst draw in the deck, by the way, even considering Doomguard coming down this turn, he'd be trading off at maximum 3 of the minions, so then you'd have a buff on 3 yourself with Mark of the Lotus, even if you only had 1 mana available. If the minions do get traded out, then that's more mana available to you, and you're then able to potentially develop Firefly and buff that
replicate
as well.
the minions anyway.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's going to just go ahead and go face here, or Franzar, which means Mark of the Lotus now can buff, but it's still very, very awkward. It's a full board clear, yes, but it's not really gaining any benefit, and you're handing the board back to Zoo in that position.
You are handing it back to them with no cards in hand, though.
It's true.
So maybe you take the full board clear because of how strong your follow-up now is. You gain your mana back, Firefly, Flame Elemental, Crab, Raven, Mark.
No, you're using.
Oh, sorry, Mark's this turn, Mark's this turn. Still, going wide enough on minions versus 2 cards from your opponent. You have Savage Roar to try and gain the trades back again the following turn. I think it's okay to clear here.
I mean, I'm not in love with the play. I'm just staring at this hand trying to find a different option, and there just kind of isn't when you only have 1 mana available this turn.
Yeah. I mean, you could ignore the Councilman, for example, and keep 2 of the minions on the board.
That's true. That is definitely valid. I definitely would not hate
It's how afraid you are of the Councilman, because if the minions get cleared without the Councilman interacting with them, then that Councilman's never going to die.
So the important question there is how much mana do you want next turn? So let's say you're going to draw a 2-drop minion next turn that you want to play. You want to have 5, which you are going to have. So going face actually looks superior to me in this position. I like this line.
Just a direwolf from a need. Does have a tap, of course.
Not too impressive, and this again could be the window that Aggro Druid just looks to jump through. And again, you can just kind of see the matchup in a nutshell, right? Like, at what point did Aggro Druid look like it was in this match? It's been behind the whole time.
The point they drew Living Mana.
Living Mana got jammed, and now they're in this spot where they're perfectly comfortable with the situation.
Well, it's effectively one kind of 2 cards with Mark of the Lotus, of course. But those 2 cards are worth like 5 for the Zoo player here, which is what's just incredible. Like, 1 single card battled the whole board almost back down to nothing again, and will continue to apply pressure. There's Bluegill as well.
Ooh, 6, 8 plus 8, 16 damage this turn with the Bluegill Savage Roar.
You need to trade, though.
Do you need to trade?
Wonder whether you... no, that's rubbish.
It's rubbish.
Wondering whether you just go wide on the board, trade 1, 3, 3 in, push for 3, and then Savage Roar next turn to win with the Bluegill. Because you can play, what, 4 minions this turn?
Why do you think that's rubbish? That's the play that I see.
No, that wasn't the play I was thinking.
Oh, okay.
You heard some inner monologue going on where I'm like, no, Raven, that's a bad play. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry. Whereas then I spot the decent plays that actually end up winning the game. This is what's going on in my head whilst I listen to you and cast at the same time.
It's just a shocking window into the soul of Raven. His activities every evening, just stood in front of the mirror. I was like, no, Raven, you're bad. You're better. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, funny enough,
you've seen all those things Reddit say about you.
What's weird is when I look in the mirror, I don't see myself, I see you. That's the worst part. He's choosing to kill the councilman as I continue this cast while Sottle cracks himself up in the corner. But again, the outcome's kind of the same. You put 4 minions onto the board, Bluegill plus Savage Roar is going to provide a hell of a lot of damage. Wow. Tap into Soulfire with the Imp. Are you throwing the Direwolf here? You don't need it to buff any minions.
Yeah, you want... well, the problem is if you play Imp and Soulfire, you're down to 3. So I was going to say you really want to fish like Argus, for example, some kind of defensive play, like but then that doesn't even work.
Second Voidwalker.
Sure.
But there's only one, you know, Highlander Voidwalker. Just comes out with a sword. And you're like, what? Yeah, it's definitely a tough one. It's just you don't... The Direwolf is a 2-2 at the end of the day. The extra damage, sure, it's nice, but you don't need it because you're not trying to kill him this turn without, you know, Soulfire and Doomguard, for example.
Well, if you just play everything, go face, Soulfire face, and put yourself on Soulfire or Doomguard draw for lethal.
We're halfway in between. We kill the Raven. Don't appreciate that, to be honest, the need, but okay.
Power of the World picked up, can play it all, so that would be 2,
16?
3, 4, 12, 15. Can't hero power as well.
Oh, sorry, it's 1 off, yeah.
Yeah. So just a little bit short. He can deal all that damage through here and just put Zoo on not being able to life tap for the rest of the game. There is 8 damage coming back at him, so unless the exact one card that gets drawn is Soulfire or Doomguard, then the Zoo would be forced to just trade into you at that point.
I was wondering how much you actually...
Play everything, Savage Roar, use the Savage Roar face damage to kill the Direwolf and send everything else face. That's also valid.
I was wondering if you power the Wild into a minion and do the rest. Because then you've got 1 more minion than they can trade into. But you probably end up losing the damage throughout anyway. Because the minion does 3, the Power of the Wild does 3 anyway. It's going to go for the value trades. Okay, this is fine.
Interesting. I mean, I respect this as a line because...
I was going to say, is he going to Savage Roar and keep the 2-3?
Right, okay, yeah. So this is what I was going to say. It's like, I respect this as a line because you're clearing Zoo's board, which is almost always a fantastic plan. The problem is that you're not using your Savage Roar, and that was probably the best your Savage Roar ever gets. If you trade off this 2-3 into a... what the hell?
Lakari Fellhound. In case you guys don't know what this card does, as you've probably never seen it before.
You can look at it.
Yeah. It's a 4-mana 3/8 taunt, but what you didn't see was that it also discards 2 cards from your hand. Not the worst card to draw off the top against a highly aggressive deck you are falling behind against. Suddenly, Lalasong's in a bit of a rough position now, because that takes all of his minions plus hero power to trade into, and his opponent, you know, that will take 3 damage, put him to 6, and, you know, Anit can still tap now.
And there's a Crazed Alk, which means...
Oh yeah, which means it requires more than that.
Oh,
War Leader's going to help.
Though. War Leader gives him 5, means he can push through it without taking the 3, or he can just push 1 to face with the Firefly, keep the Firefly alive if he wants to go at it that way.
This is still close.
It is. It's really close now because now France are on draws for lethal as well. And that was a very shaky turn on the previous turn from Malaysia. They clearly weren't sure what the right play was that turn. I mean, I suggested 4 different plays anyway. I wasn't sure either. The line they took turns out to have been a little bit better against Lakari Fellhound than Savage Roar, everything go face, put him to 2 would have been, because then the trades would have come back unfavorably for you and this Fellhound would have blown it out.
If they'd known, though, they could have just kept Savage Roar.
Right.
If you know, oh, of course my opponent runs Lakari Fellhound in Zoo. It's actually a card I think a lot of players tried.
Like day 1, day 2.
Yeah, on the face of it, 4-mana 3/8 taunt.
Yeah.
Okay, it sounds like a good card. Discard 2, though.
Yeah, the problem is that it just does not play nicely with Doomguard at all. And if you're going to have one of those 2, it's going to be Doomguard every day.
It's going to choose not to take the extra damage here. Still going to take 2 from the Alchemist if there's no trade from an Anit to kill this War Leader. This is very close. Both players on 10. Both players A little bit dicey. Firefly, not a bad pickup to go a bit wider, but I feel like, yeah, there's got to be a live tap here. There needs to be something more powerful on the board to contest.
Yeah, no buff though, and this is another reason why Zoo has kind of fallen off, is that there actually aren't that many buff cards in your deck anymore.
Abusive Sergeant.
Yeah,
Get him.
Abusive isn't even being played by most people these days, or just a single copy when it is a lot of the time. So what you used to be able to do so consistently...
Look at the response.
Which is to buff into minions like this 3-3 and keep the board clear. Now those buffs are just not there, which means things stick to the board, and then you get swiped in the face off the top.
Our last song, just a few prayers of thanks, and you cannot believe it. Very, very close indeed. That live tap, on one hand, you could say gave him the lethal out. On the other hand, would he have even won without doing it and without getting that silverware golem on the board? Very close game there. Game I did think would be that close when you talk about Zoo versus Aggro Druid, but hey-ho.
And again, I mean, I was worried there for a second because I sold that matchup as being very heavily Aggro Druid favored, which I believe it is. I mean, it's a deck against Zoo. There's a good chance that the other deck is
probably favored, unless it's Zoo. And then you're like, oh no.
Go look yourself in the mirror for a second, Raven.
No, because I'll see you.
That matchup, you kind of saw it go through the ringer completely, right? Where plan A was just get more minions on the board early than your opponent can. That failed. Plan B was just living mana, try and get that to carry you. That failed. Plan C is then just try and push damage over the line at the end. That looked like it was going to fail when Fellhound came down to wall it all out, but then the swipe draw was just good enough to end it.
Also as well, swipe, not a card that every aggro druid's even running either, so the fact that that was even an out wasn't 100% decided because we just didn't know if it was in the deck. The next game we've got coming up is going to be Diz Demon versus Chonga. And this is going to be a great one. I mean, Diz Demon, I think, is just Lorinda's favorite player ever.
Quite possibly.
Yeah, he talks about Diz Demon quite a lot. And Chonga, one of my favorite players from Malaysia and from the Southeast Asia scene in general. So looking forward to seeing how these two players go up against them.
I should leave so you can cast this game with Lorinda and you could fight each other over your
no, we can both be biased against Lorinda. It's fine.
That sounds like an excellent plan. Let's do that. I do sympathize with Lorinda's stance on this, though. Diz Demon is a very unappreciated player. I think Lorinda first got turned onto him when he did the... You're such a child! Every week!
I did not do a thing.
This comes out. You all saw that. You saw that smirk.
I'm just a happy person. Carry on.
Lorinda first took note of him when he started doing stats on HCT players and found out that Diz Demon actually had more wins at the time he was doing it than anyone else in an HCT preliminary and playoff event without ever actually getting over the line and making it to a championship, which is, you know, unfortunate to say the least.
Yes.
It's a similar situation to Pavel at DreamHacks, which is again from Lorinda stats research point, where Pavel actually has one of the best win rates in DreamHacks overall, but has only made a top 16 or top 8 cut once. So, you know, there are these players that just through, you know, weight of numbers and statistics are massively consistent performers, but they perform too consistently. They would like one high roll every now and again that gets them all the way to a top 4 or a victory, but they're actually just performing consistently around that, you know, 67% win rate kind of mark.
Yeah, it's like if you look at like Green Sheep, for example, he's been so close. He's actually had correct scores to qualify through top 16s of DreamHack, but then just missed on tie-breaking. Like, I think more than once, actually, just this past sort of circuit.
I think twice, yeah.
Yeah, which is actually crazy to have the score required at a DreamHack, which are often super stacked events.
And then miss tiebreaker for last call on points against Stanadachi as well. Like, again, there was so many, towards the start of this year, there was so many people where, like, you know, Green Sheep made a run back to the Winter Championship Bahamas, and so many people kept saying, oh yeah, Green Sheep had a pretty poor 2016. I was like, did he? Like,
yes, in the sense that he just about missed every single tournament.
Tied for 8th in last call points. Like, how is that having a bad year?
It's not.
Yeah.
There you go.
Moving on.
France and Malaysia going to be Shaman versus Mage. I was speaking to Falcon again, and we've discussed this many, many times. Like, Shaman, I feel, is the ultimate tier 2 deck. It doesn't really blow anyone away. At the moment, of course, or the ultimate tier 2 class, should I say. It doesn't really blow anyone away. It can get wins, but in just by playing the good Shaman cards, nothing extra really surprises me. It's like, yes, Jade Claws, Jade Lightning, good cards. Aya, good card. Oh, I guess you can win some games with those cards. You know what I mean? Anything else I've seen people try? We saw Korea, Elementals. There were about 2 Elementals played in the whole game and they won because all the other Shaman cards are good.
Right.
It's such a weird class in a weird spot at the moment.
Did he say that Korea were running Fireplume Harbinger, by
Yes,
the way?
that was one of the 2 elementals I think they played all game.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Malaysia, on the other hand, are going to be running the mage into this. Cabal Courier seems to be an indicator that this is going to be more last week's Gunter mage than this week's secret mage, but mage, again, like Shaman, seems to be evolving time after time, point after point, and it's the same kind of thing. It's like, okay, which deck are we going to play today that has Mana Worm and Arcane Intellect, Arcanologist, Primordial Glyph,
You hate these decks, don't you?
and Firelands Portal in them? I don't know, I'm seriously just making the point where there's this core of like 12 cards that are fantastic mage cards in the current expansion, and then people are building various decks around them.
Yeah, and again, you mentioned the Courier as a nod to this style. I'm actually surprised this card has lasted this long in these lists. I really think they're going to be dropped soon if this style overall sticks around for a bit longer, say, like with Medivh.
Okay.
Because when we talked to, oh my god, I've gone completely blank. The Viper last week.
Okay.
About this list. They were playing
Acolytes, right?
Sorcerer's Apprentice as a one-of, I believe, and then playing Elites as well. And it's like, I tried that. I was like, yeah, this... Sometimes Cabal just gives you bad cards as choices, nothing that's more suitable, whereas at least if Glyph gives you a bad option, it's a 2 mana less kind of bad option to squeeze in a turn, right? And they're all mage spells. Whereas sometimes Cabal just doesn't give you much, and it is a 3 mana 2/2 at the end of the day. Sorcerer's Apprentice can allow you to do really silly things with Glyph, which is a lot of fun, and Elise is just solid.
I take your argument, sir. In the meantime, Arcanologist has been played and drawn his first ice block, second ice block picked up as well. Glyph is going to go off here, and it's a little bit early. He doesn't really have full information about what he's going to come up against, but he knows probably that both Volcanic Potion and Firelands Portal are good cards against Shaman for various reasons. Volcanic Potion can just clean up the mess so efficiently, all the small totems and early game minions, whereas Firelands Portal, there's a good chance there is 1 or 2 5/5s in your opponent's Shaman deck.
Yeah, I like Firelands Portal. I think with where Shaman is at the moment, it's actually just better than Volcanic Potion because you kill totems, which is awesome, but other than that, there's not a lot that's actually at 2 health, even 3 with a ping. There's a couple of minions, but really you want to kill those things from below on curve. You want to kill those, even the mid-tiers or mid-sized Jades, for example. You just want them gone, and then you gain a minion. And for 5 mana, exceptionally powerful going into the mid-game.
You can see now, just in hand, 3 of them right now. 2 Jade Chieftains and a thing from below. Those Jade Chieftains will, of course, come alongside other Jade minions, which kind of mitigates their exposure to Firelands Portal a little bit, but having answers to those kind of minions is one of the crucial points against Shaman, just to be able to swing the board, make sure that you can buy yourself a couple of turns by putting Shaman on the back foot for 1 or 2 turns themselves. And
although this is very, very early in the game, just having Alexstrasza in hand kind of changes your mindset. As for Malaysia here, I feel you can then start to say, oh, well, this is just guaranteed damage on turn 9. Can I just play more defensively now and then just try and kill them afterwards, knowing I will deal 15? So you can use some more tools to actually remove minions and try and retain board control.
And I love the play from Dizdemon from France. There wasn't much choice going on. It was kind of Mana Tide or Totem, but I think it's something people don't do enough and something people don't plan for enough is just Mana Tide on curve. Because you can play it on turn 3, and in this case, look at the disruption that it caused. They had to spend their entire turn 3 pinging that Mana Tide. They couldn't play Arcane Intellect, they couldn't play Cabal Courier, they couldn't play Ice Block. They just had to ping and pass. And I think when you're playing against Shaman, Malaysia had no way of doing this, by the way, but their consideration always has to be, okay, how do I set up to deal with turn 3 Mana Tide without breaking stride? I don't want to slow down. I want to be able to deal with turn 3 Mana Tide and keep going. And I think, crucially, when you're playing like a board development deck, like Paladin, for example, Pirate Warrior even, it's the big question is, can I deal with this play that I'm going to make? Can I deal with Mana Tide Totem and keep going without breaking my flow? Yeah, because it's just a win-win for France there, wasn't it? To be honest, they draw a card, they disrupt the turn, and if it wasn't disrupted, then they draw another card next turn, and they still have to deal with it. So definitely a strong win-win situation for those guys. But now the Mana Worm is down. Second Primordial Glyph, second Mana Worm in hand. This 1/1 Jade doesn't look like it's really going to be enough. Second Jade Lightning could be used just as tempo. We can see that this is a later game. Jade Shaman, for example, with the
Chieftains in hand. So you could actually just make an argument to just Jade Lightning this Mana Worm, get it off the board, create a 2/2, and also start to build into this, oh, hey, look, I will make a 3/3 into a 4/4 with Death Rattle. Then the Chieftains start to make 5/5 taunts into 6/6 taunt. You can actually start to just chain these out.
Counting with Raven.
Yeah.
I like it. That is how the Jade mechanic works.
Just thought I'd let you know, just in case you forgot. You have took a week off, so I'll just remind you.
Thanks. I enjoyed my little refresher course on the Jade mechanics. Thanks, buddy.
You know what I mean, though.
I do. It's quite a simple concept, honestly.
You got to make sure with you. So Aya can be played on 6.
Whoa!
Yeah, because there's no overload and 6 mana available.
Whoa!
Fortunately, Violence Portal, not really the on-curve 5 mana, sort of removal you would have expected from Chonga here. But it does have plenty of other options. I think this might be the turn where you try and squeeze out one of the ice blocks, just to get it down. I do like getting it down early, just so it's done. Then any valets off the top, you don't have to even think about proccing them. And the board's still quite, unthreatening as it is already. Mana Worm kind of deals with this board. If you play Mana Worm Ice Block this turn, it actually just trades with the board fine. You've developed the Ice Block. Then you can move on with your overall game plan going forward.
Yeah, the problem with these 1/1s and 2/2s as they start coming up against you from Shaman is that you do have to be slightly concerned about them. You're not scared of them now, but if you don't deal with them, then suddenly 2 or 3 turns down the line, they're still on the board, and Shaman's been able to develop behind it. Now suddenly you're terrified of Bloodlust every single turn.
Even Flame Tongue for good trades.
Right, because you haven't dealt with these minions. So I think, starting to ping these away while you can, just making sure the board state doesn't get too wide. Because remember, we passed up Volcanic Potion this game, for example. We don't have the small AoE available to be able to answer these kinds of threats. So I think just slowly, piece by piece, picking this board apart over the next turn or two is going to work in your benefit, because having seen a good chunk of Jade come out now, or now the 2/2 Jades on the board, you've seen Jade Lightning happen, etc. You know that this isn't probably going to be the infinite heal deck that's coming out against you. There's probably only just a few heal cards that you have to play around. So the long game actually works reasonably in your favor, especially now you already have Alexstrasza in your hand, as well as a 0 mana Frostbolt.
Well, bear in mind, not just a 0 mana Frostbolt, there's 14 damage in hand straight away with the Violence Portal, the Fireball, and the Frostbolt in one turn.
Right.
So there is a large amount of burst, and this is what I was talking about earlier, where we might even just see the Frostbolt held onto as opposed to killing the Aya, killing the 3/3, just to say, I want all of this burst available. So Alexstrasza plus a ping, which is super annoying. It doesn't really add up to 15 exactly, but it does mean that you can actually just do 14 from hand. That there's not a lot this demon can do, especially because, as you mentioned, there's probably not the Jinyu's Hot Springs Spirit Echoes in this list.
I would expect to see some combination of those healing cards. It doesn't look like the list that's going to be playing all 4 of them with 2 Spirit Echoes,
like Jinyu,
and just endlessly healing up over and over again. So I think the burn plan is definitely a very realistic expectation. But the Frostbolt is going to be used here just to make sure that board control is maintained. And I think this is something that you do see from this deck a little bit more than you might expect to, is that the deck can turn time into damage, right? So if Frostbolt can be used, yes, it's 3 damage down the drain, but if it gains you an extra turn or 2, that's an extra turn or 2 of draws, of discovers, of whatever else, and that just turns into more damage over time.
Yeah, and I think because the total didn't add up to 15, it's much easier to use that Frostbolt, right? Because it was going to be 14 in one turn.
Yeah.
Then it means you don't have the chance at just Alex then kill. You have to Alex ping kill, or Alex go for the burst, then squeeze a ping in as well. Farsight. I'm not sure what I think about this card in this list.
Yeah, that's actually one of the slowest cards we've seen alongside Jade Chieftain, which maybe gives some kind of nod to the exact opposite of what we were saying before. Maybe this is actually a very late game concern deck that's going to be playing a lot of healing in it. The fact that we haven't seen healing cards get drawn yet makes me suspicious that there's not all 4 of them plus in this deck, but Farsight is definitely an interesting tool. It might be a nod to Spirit Echo, since it'd be a fantastic card to just nail Spirit Echo off Farsight, and then suddenly you have this 0 mana tool to generate value.
Play it whenever you want, combine it with anything you want, because I think that's the trick as well. Making sure the minions stick, or you can play the right minions to combine it with, to make sure you get that Death Rattle off. These valet off the top, No Ice Block active, though, so we'd have to play the Ice Block to combine with the Valet and a Ping. But that's the whole turn, and you just kill the 4/4 here. You'll take a 6 at least.
Yeah, alternatively, you can just commit that Firelands that you've been holding on to. As we said right the way back when it was chosen, it's ideal for killing all these 5/5s against Jade Shaman. And there's that Tundra Rhino we were talking about earlier. 2/5 charge minion comes out. Isn't a great deal of help on this board, though. The 2 mana remaining could already ping off the 1/1. He can now use the Tundra Rhino to trade into the 1/1 if he wants, and then just develop a 2-drop instead, which is exactly what Malaysia are going to go ahead and do here. But it's actually, even though it had charge, not a great outcome off the Firelands portal whatsoever, because it just gets traded out very easily now by the 4/4 Jade.
Yeah, it's the 4/4 Jade there being the key problem. And there's a Hot Spring Guardian. So there is something. There are heals in the deck, which would have been odd if there wasn't, right? Yeah.
Let's be clear, there was always going to be a non-zero amount of healing in this deck. It's just we have seen some Shaman builds that play almost every possible healing card and then combine that with the Spirit Echo, which was a deck that we saw come out almost directly in response to Freeze Mage and Gunter Mage being a thing and just potentially trying to outlast them with all those big heal effects.
Yeah, for example, we're not going to see Kalimos heal come out of this deck, more than likely.
We might.
We won't.
No, we probably won't.
Too many Jade cards. You can only run 30. Grotto's Ooze probably just got its best target it's ever going to get against Shaman. 1 charge of a Jade Claws. There's been a few lists that have been playing Twilight Hammer of Twilight, sorry, but you can't hold on for something like that, I don't think.
Why does everyone call that card Twilight Hammer? Everyone seems to do it. Like, it's quite clearly called Hammer of Twilight, but there's something in everyone's head that just wants to call it Twilight Hammer. I don't understand what it is.
It's probably because I'm going to go half lore on you.
Okay.
So I think it's called Twilight Hammer or Twilight something that is a faction in Warcraft.
Okay.
So then it's just natural to say, oh, like, you know the way cards are called like like a faction than the name of a card?
Right.
It's like, oh, Twilight Summoner, Twilight whatever.
Yeah.
So I think it's easier for people to just skip to Twilight Hammer as opposed to Hammer of Twilight.
It's one of the rare opportunities where my lack of being a role player works to my advantage. I don't have these preconceived notions of how you're supposed to say cards.
Yeah. Most of the time, though, it's just a hindrance.
Cabal Courier took the Flame Geyser off it in the end. It was able to take care of some of this board. The Volcano pickup now, this is a fairly standard inclusion in any of the Jade Shaman decks these days. But Flame Geyser didn't really get too much work done there. Is able to answer some of this board state, but still 3 secrets in hand right now, looking to be paired with Medivh's Valet at some point in the future. He has found his way to the Alex Straza turn now, has Chonga, without being under enormous amount of pressure, but he hasn't found the time to develop any of these ice blocks yet. And you were talking about this all the way back on turn 3, I think, about how important it is to have one of these ice blocks up at some point.
Yeah, I just think you need the flex, because Medivh's Valet is such a powerful card. Like, it's 2 mana, 2/3, deal 3 if you have a secret. He's absolutely incredible, but not having the flexibility to use it whenever you draw it or whenever you need it is one of the bigger problems I feel with this deck, is that if you can get Ice Block down, even if it's just on a bit of a dull turn where you don't really gain anything too much from it, but you can see swings happening later, it's always worth it. And especially because the ice blocks were the secrets. If it was Ice Barrier, then less likely because your opponent just hits in and you can't Valet anymore. But just getting 1 ice block live would have been really nice. Look at all these value trades now. So this turn, this is the sort of turn you don't want to play ice block on, because you'd rather deal with all this mess that's on the opponent's side of the board. So this, again, is just going to take away. Imagine this turn if there was the Medivh's Valet into, say, Firelands Portal to help trade off the 6/6, or even just kill the 5/5. You could do something a little bit stronger here, but it's not going to be available.
Well, the reason I bring it up is that he could have still gone for the Medivh's Valet kind of turn last turn while we were talking about Hammer of Twilight. He went with Cabal Courier instead and then took a small removal to take care of the 5/2. He took the Flame Geyser. He could have done that same thing just by playing an Ice Block and playing Medivh's Valet to be that small source of damage instead. And the Medivh's Valet would have been this 2/3 on the board instead of this 2/2.
And there would be an Ice Block.
A very similar situation. So I'm just kind of wondering what the long-term plan is for Chonga and co as to how they're finding their way through this matchup.
Looks like they're going to go from a, going to go for the Ice Barrier, Fireball, and the Valet to clear up as much as possible. Still leaves 2 big minions onto the board. The Healing Totem as well is kind of a pain, potentially pushing the Jade or any other minions they trade with out of ping range for some of these minions as well. So, and now suddenly, Alex Straza seems a bit like, do I just play this to play it? You know, just to drop it down. Not next turn or anything, but you know what I mean? There's nothing to really back up an Alexstrasza, especially because you're expecting a Hex.
This is a pretty miserable turn now for France. They've run out of minions, and Hot Spring Guardian is not really something they want to play until they see the Alexstrasza happen. It's kind of their security blanket at this point, but the rest of their hand is just all of their AoE effects. So they'll be looking for Farsight to pick them up some pressure here. They'll be looking for Farsight to pick them up some pressure here. No.
Didn't work. It's going to be a tough one as well. Hero Power, this is the issue as well. Hero Power into spell damage still only clears the Cabal for the Maelstrom. It's going to go for the Lightning Storm, clear off the board. So because of no minions, we've got this demon saying, well, I haven't got any, which means I'm defending the ones I do have to start stacking up some more damage.
Yep. But the hand has just run completely dry here. And this line that Chonga and Malaysia have taken is kind of just to set up this exact position, right? They've said, hey, I'm just going to kill everything you play. If I have to do it a turn behind you, so every minion you play gets to hit me once while I'm dealing with the previous minion, I have enough life to deal with that with ice barriers, the fact that I was still at 30, I have 2 ice blocks in hand. Eventually, you're just going to completely run out of pressure, and that seems to be very slowly what is happening here for France.
Yeah, what would worry me is Malaysia, do they know there's no Spirit Echoes? Because, like, one Spirit Echoes on the board is like, maybe I will run out of damage because Spirit Echoes onto a Chieftain, onto any Jade generation at that would be a huge, huge nightmare. So just create too many minions onto the board, and as you mentioned, like just not enough direct answers from Chonga, unless there was some kind of Discover Flame Strike or something along those lines.
Yeah, I think you can react to a Spirit Echo if it comes down and say, okay, there's the end of the board plan. Now we'll try and set up our Alexstrasza plan instead. And the fact they haven't seen that, they're just going to continue doing what they have been doing, which is just choosing to answer this board state. That isn't ideal in terms of stats on the board, but it is an annoying roadblock. And there finally is that Spirit Echo that France have been waiting for.
Good timing for Chonga to kill the Chieftain.
Yeah.
Because if he didn't that turn, that would look very, very, very awkward indeed. The Divine Shield on the Psychotron is normally great, but with 2 1/1s on the board, it's just going to get pinged away without any effort whatsoever. I wonder if you ever... There's a couple of choices here for this demon. You can play the Hot Spring. You do gain the heal, which is fine. You can play Spirit Echo and just get this kind of value. You probably trade like the Totem in or something. But then you only get a 5/5 Jade, but you do develop the board. If you wait, you might not draw something good next turn.
Right.
And then you're like, okay, I'll wait one more turn. Then you're dead. So, there's a real tough call here for the Spirit Echoes, I feel.
Yeah, if you're going to go Spirit Echo here, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't play the Hot Spring Guardian. You know there is no Glyph card in hand right now, so even Hot Spring coming down...
Yeah, you also get that dude as well.
You get Forbidden Ancient back as well.
Which can be a big guy, right?
Right, yeah. But if you're playing Spirit Echo, I don't see any reason not to play the Hot Spring Guardian, because you know there's no Glyph in hand, which means something like Alex Frostnova in the same turn isn't possible. So if Alexstrasza comes down here to try and burn you down to 15, you know that the Alexstrasza is on the board for you to trade your Hot Spring Guardian into and then heal yourself back up. So there's no world where you're ever really losing the healing potential by playing the Hot Spring Guardian first here. But I love the recognition of the situation to just heal the minion instead, knowing that 26 is an enormous amount of health when you factor in the amount of removal that's been used on the board already.
Yeah.
Right? So you know that Alexstrasza has to hit you in the face before any kind of burn plan can get set up. Therefore, there is no reason to heal your face before Alexstrasza comes down, so you might as well just take the health on the minion instead.
Yeah, in terms of the Hot Spring as well, worst case scenario, this Volcano, right? Yeah, worst case, you can just Volcano your own board and be like, okay, let's do this. But Alexstrasza is going to come down now. Not going to require the Hex. The second Hot Spring, not bad timing at all. I can still play 2 more. The awkward thing is, do you trade the Hot Spring in, then Hex? Or do you and then play the 2 other Hot Springs and then just go? Do you really want to pile away like the 5/5 onto this when you could just Hex it?
No, I don't think you're trading stuff off this turn. I don't think there's any real need to. You can generate so much pressure this turn with the Forbidden Ancient, as we mentioned. It just comes back to your hand to be able to come back down as a potential 7/7. Like, this demon seems to disagree. He's going to go for the long-term heal plan here, make sure he has as much value as possible. I find this a little bit surprising because the second one was drawn that can get you out of range of any realistic combination your opponent can do with no glyph cards in hand, right? It just can't happen. Then on the following turn, if they have set you up for some kind of ridiculous burn plan, you always do have that emergency volcano switch that you can pull. But if you're playing the 7/7 here as well, you're then putting too much health on the board to reliably self-kill with volcano.
And if you have to double volcano, then it negates the point of being able to play the hot spring that turn anyway. Volk potion, not gonna do too much. It's getting a little bit awkward. Meteor, what a pickup!
Positioning on point from France, though.
Yeah. Sometimes those 6 mana kill a big dude is okay. Like a siphon soul that doesn't heal.
The stress painted onto Chonga's face right now as Malaysia are trying to find a way to victory in this matchup, and you can see that they are just slowly seeing it just slip away from them in this position. Yeah, that would in fact be lethal. Good job.
The old Meteor face.
Just going to Meteor the 9/9, but again, positioning on point, making sure that the damage isn't done to any other relevant minions, just hitting that 1/1 totem.
Harrison against Medivh, I've heard, is pretty good.
Seems solid.
A lot of the time Medivh is played and there isn't a follow-up spell, as you're normally trying to get the highest value out of the Atiesh, which means you save, you play the flame strikes, even the fireballs, you know what I mean, like the turn after. So Harrison could completely blow this game out here for Chonga. And he can afford to keep it as well.
Yeah, I like the way that Disdemon and France have played the last few turns as well, in that not only did they acknowledge that 18 was safe on the previous turn, they went one step further and said, hey, you've been fireballing and frostbolting my minions all game. Like, you can't even do 15 from hand following up this Alexstrasza. I just don't respect your ability to do that. So they just went even harder pressure with the Forbidden Ancient moving forward. They've just relied on both Hot Spring Guardians to bounce them back up afterwards. So it's good card counting from France in this position, knowing exactly how much damage they have to play around from any given position. And it looks like they might just be able to out-stabilize now, because that one out that was probably available for Malaysia was the Medivh draw into huge Flame Strike pickups, other big spells like the Meteor that's just been used.
Oh, Flame Strike.
Yeah. Flame Strike is nice, but when it's not being paired with an ATS charge, it's not a huge swing, and a huge swing is what Malaysia need right now.
Yeah, Flame Strike, ping, pass, close the board, put, say, 5/5 in the hand for France along with that healing totem. That's it. They're probably going to nod that at least one of the cards on the far left is a volcano or some kind of, or maybe a hex, some kind of removal that just hasn't been required to be used yet. Probably not both though. Are you just okay Flame Striking here?
It doesn't feel like a game-winning play, so I'm not surprised to see Malaysia just looking for something extra to do here.
Yeah, this is kind of backing up my reasoning for Cabal, I think, going to be going away from this list at some point. Like, what do any of these cards kind of do? Whereas if this card was an Elise, or if even a Sorcerer's Apprentice, maybe not this turn, of course, but you know what I mean? It can potentially give you more options, whereas this just like, yeah, they're okay options. Tempest might give you a good card, maybe. Could just play Elise and get 5 good cards.
5 good cards.
Okay, probably 3, right?
a couple of good cards, yeah. Spirit Echo number 2 is huge because I think we kind of fell into the trap with this deck. So many of the Jades were drawn early that it felt like it was just a more solid, consistent Jade deck that was built to do one thing consistently. As the second third of the deck has been drawn, though, it's all those cards that we've seen from this particular anti-mage deck that we've seen in the past. The double Spirit Echo, all the healing, the double Volcano, Harrison Jones, etc., etc. So there's a good chance that almost all of the proactive minions have already been expended from this deck. So Spirit Echo being drawn now, while it can actually get value on the board, is absolutely massive, because it could have been a complete whiff 2 turns from now.
I see a potential lethal.
Oh, yeah.
Harrison, Spirit Echoes for the trolls, and then just say, well, I've got Harrison, probably my hand afterwards. Do you just quit now? No, is the idea.
Apparently.
The Tempest is the problem. He's seen Polymorph. If the Tempest has like a Polymorph effect, then suddenly Medivh's back in the game.
Right.
So I don't mind not playing the Harrison troll move, but it would have been funny.
You're suggesting the real life card game courtesy move of showing your hand. You cannot beat this, sir. Would you like to concede?
Yes. Unfortunately, it wouldn't work out because this Tempest could get him anything.
So Firelands Portal number 3 of the game being picked up now. The second natural one from the deck alongside that early Glyph Portal that got picked as well. Again, massive for killing 5/5s. When those 5/5s death rattle into more 5/5s, it's less ideal.
It will only death rattle the once, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Spirit Echoes only procs once.
You can have an argument about what that text should do.
The text makes sense though, right?
The text says death rattle, return this card to your hand. So you could willingly interpret that as return the same card to your hand twice if you put it on there twice. I think you could present that argument. But the fact is that it only happens once. It cannot stack.
Because it's only one card.
Yes.
You can only return one card to your hand once, right?
Sure.
That's the logic way I see it. At least.
I understand. I'm not disputing you.
Well, you say sure to me like that, subtle, and it sounds a bit dicey to me.
Sure.
Well, there you go, point proven, of course.
Manatide number 2. Not the world's greatest pickup, but this Shimmering Tempest is hanging around, just doing a little bit of chip damage here. And if Malaysia are going to find a way over the line here, it is going to be stumbling over the line rather than charging spectacularly. They've used so much removal, so much damage in making sure they're taking care of board states that they do not have a great deal left over to just end the game here. And Mediv, as we've mentioned, is going to be answered immediately by that Harrison Jones when it comes down.
Yeah, real shame actually that Chunga's not drawn Mediv yet. A lot of these mage games go late, and it's because there's no Mediv. Mediv is often the push you do to try and close out a game, and Shimmering Tempest, it's just not going to be enough. It would have to be a truly ludicrous draw to be able to finish that. And the problem is, Firelands Portal being 7 mana, one of the burn cards that's not been used yet, it is still a problem just being as high mana as it is. There's no Fireballs, Frostbolt. They're the cards you want left in your hand at this stage in the game to say, I might just be able to get you because of a card like that as well.
Yep. Pyroblast still available. Is there one Fireball remaining as well? I only remember one being
Maybe
used.
there's one more.
There might be a second one. So
did you just go for it?
It's crazy how much damage there is in this deck total, right? Like,
yeah.
With one portal taken from Glyph, he's used 2 portals, he's used a Fireball, he's used a Frostbolt, I believe, as well. All on minions, just to slow them down. All right. We'll take it. We take those.
Oh, Shimmering Tempest. Crazy kid.
But with all that burn still used, there's still, what, like 15, 18 damage here remaining, and we suspect there's another Fireball as well for 24.
And there's the kind of damage of Mediv.
Wait, what?
In terms of,
Swing at the edge 3 times, get him.
+3, right?
Yeah.
I did mean the minion potential damage, but obviously if you're just counting burn, it's different.
Right.
But yeah,
I very rarely put War Golem in my deck and then count on it just connecting for 7 when I'm calculating my alts.
That's okay. That's reasonable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think seeing these hot springs and the Spirit Echoes, I think you just go for it now. Oh god, there's Jinyus as well.
Unlucky. That's what I was saying, right? It just didn't seem like it was going to be this deck for a whole third of the...
It just drew the deck the right way around, right? I'll draw the healing when I need it, thank you.
Yeah. It just went Jade, pressure, 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 and then suddenly, once it ran out of pressure, it's been able to just sit back and just out-heal any pressure that comes out the other way. And the reason that it can now out-heal any pressure that comes back is that the pressure from their own Jades early on sucked out that Fireball, those 2 Firelands portals, etc. Because all of a sudden, that's 16 to 20 extra damage that's getting flung at your face if you didn't get them to use it on minions early on.
Plus the 15-ish from Alex Strasser as well.
Yep.
It's like just absolutely crazy. And this is just going to be, I think, too tough, to be honest, for Malaysia to deal with. Yeah, absolute nightmare. Suddenly the Flame Strike, not enough because of the Jades. Also, we can see the Jinyu. There's still that Manatide Totem, which means that, drawing more and more into even more cards that are left in the deck means that it's just less and less likely that Chunga's going to make it here.
That Blood Mage is scary as well. I don't know the exact deck size, but if you look at how slim the pack is right now, that's only a couple of cards remaining. There's a very good chance that all of those cards get drawn naturally this game anyway, which means playing Blood Mage here just accelerates your fatigue even harder.
With only 7 health remaining, you cannot take too many hits of fatigue, because your 2 ice blocks will mean nothing if you fatigue out this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one. Blood Mage Thanos will... Yeah, because Flame Strike does the same job as... Sorry, Flame Strike Ping does the same job as Thanos, except you don't draw a card, right?
Right.
So there's no real need to do it?
Yeah, the only slight difference is 1 extra damage onto the 7/7, which
Doesn't
then
matter,
puts it into Volcanic range, but it's in Volcanic plus Ping range anyway.
Next turn,
like,
yeah, exactly.
How much of a difference does it really start to make? I don't know.
Makes a difference. Oh yeah, the healing taunt will be dead as well, so
Yep.
it makes like, almost no difference actually. Okay, it's going to be Frostbolt and the Violence Ball this turn. Going to work its way up into the Flame Strike. Taunt not too terrible here. I just don't see a way that Malaysia can actually do the damage though.
It's really crucial how many cards are left. You know, if that's 2 more cards remaining from this point, then they're in a mess. If it's 4, then maybe there's a chance. We'll find out in the next couple of draws as to whether we get the almost out of cards alert. But
And one's Medivh though, right?
One's Medivh, and we suspect there's a second
Fireball.
Fireball unless we've forgotten about something.
And a second Pyroblast. Again, maybe there is enough damage, Saul.
Maybe.
But with Medivh, I imagine this is another reason to hold the Flame Strike. Because that's one of the, well, apart from the Pyroblast, that's the biggest card you can do. 7 drops normally at least reasonable.
I mean,
in terms of size.
In this position, though, are you really like drawing Medivh, playing Medivh, and then Flame Striking the next turn? All the while there's a 7/4 on the board hanging around? Doesn't seem all that likely.
I mean, winning doesn't seem all that likely, to be honest, at this point.
Also a valid point.
When you can just freely Hex Maelstrom a Taunt.
Ooh!
All.
There's a draw. There's an extra card.
Yeah, it's also the Ice Block product. Jinyu just for good luck.
Alright, still at least 2 more cards remaining after this. No alert just yet. So he has some time and he's got the Medivh. But, as we mentioned, he'll be wanting to Flame Strike after the Medivh, just does not really have that luxury right now.
Yeah, it's actually a huge problem.
So you have to Medivh, right? You have to Medivh and just sacrifice the block.
Yeah, 100%. You can't. You've got a second block. If you don't Medivh now, you never play Medivh in the whole game because you can't squeeze it in with Ice Block.
The problem is, so this turn you Medivh, then next turn you basically have to Flame Strike block if you go down that line, which means if he trades with things that aren't the 7 attack dude, then you're never winning that game. So his new plan is just clear this board, go Medivh afterwards, and try and get through a position where my block doesn't get popped, but I don't see that coming to reality either. Basically, there are a lot of explorations of ways that you can find as Malaysia to lose this game. You have your pick of how you would like to lose this game in this position.
Yeah, so confident this demon's playing the trump card he has in hand in terms of how to just directly crush Medivh, the Harrison Jones. Too much damage available. Pretty much doesn't matter what's played for Diz. You know, Diz Demon doesn't care what Chunga plays this turn. There's got to be an Ice Block, fine. Other than that, what you even bothered about?
Right.
Nothing. The only worry is if there's like a miracle. If there's Ice Block this turn, then like Blizzard next turn, or you know.
Well, even then, there's no harm in playing the Harrison, right? Because this turn, your opponent has to play Ice Block, or,
yeah, so
or they are dead. So Medivh does not happen. Then even if next turn you're worried about there being a Frost Nova or a Blizzard, those are still cards that Medivh just doesn't get played. So Diz Demon has recognized the exact perfect point where Medivh the Guardian never gets played this game and developed his Harrison Jones. It's actually just pretty much perfect play from him.
Yep. There's Medivh. And the self-ping. Didn't even Frostbolt to see what minion he got. Could have been a crazy 2-drop that won him the game. Or he could have...
Friendly bartender got him. Yeah.
Just plus 30 at the end of your turn. You're like, what?
Yes! Saved!
Wow, Saul just role-played for a second there. I hope you, someone recorded that. Please send it me. It's going to be used as ammo at some point in the future.
To you. English is a glorious language, Raven. You should try speaking it.
Southerner. But yeah, that was going to be a game for France, and they're going to go 2-1 up versus Malaysia. Only need one more win to get the victory overall onto the board and continue to fight out in the group, which this is one of the hotly contested groups.
It really is, yeah, and this series is potentially going to come down to the wire here. Best Mama is coming up now with Priest against Paladin. So this one, depending on the builds as well, could be another grindy encounter like we've just seen. There's classes that were turned down. Hunter from Best Mama and Revenge chose to eliminate his Priest. So looking at either a Priest mirror match or Priest against Hunter, chose to go Paladin instead, which I guess makes sense. The Priest, generally very, very strong against Hunter overall, but Paladin can kind of do that job for you anyway, so like, why really take that risk? And then you don't really want to be running into a Priest mirror match when you have better options available to you.
Yeah, and I imagine it's going to be Silence Priest. It's mainly the Priest we've been seeing a lot, at least today. Yeah. And Silence Priest is kind of, I feel like, fun to watch, horrible to play against. Do you agree?
I find it kind of interesting to play against.
I just feel that those games where they just get me.
I
and
agree.
I'm just dead. I'm like, well,
there is certainly a massive high roll potential to Silence Priest that can be frustrating when it happens. But I think in general, you know, just keeping track of like what a Divine Spirit in a Fire does to you in this situation. Like, am I supposed to suicide this 2/2 into this 4/8 for no reason? Apart from the fact that it will only do then 10 to me next turn instead of 16 or whatever the numbers are. I think that thing is kind of engaging overall, and I think there's actually like nice ways that you can limit what Silence Priest can do as well, because they only really have 4 cards in their deck.
It's one-dimensional,
plus Shadow Visions that beat you. So if you're able to like correctly navigate around all that stuff and find your way through, I don't know, I find it pretty entertaining deck both to play and play against. I will say that I'm surprised that it's actually so powerful these days, though, because it was a walking meme back in the day, right? Like, Divine Spirit in a Fire was that thing, like, when you switch to a new server that you haven't played on for 3 months, so you're on, like, rank 20 or whatever, it's that one game that you lose early on to that one guy playing Divine Spirit in a Fire. That's what this deck was. Now it's a real competitive thing that people are taking to tournaments, hitting rank 1 Legend with, and that's purely off the back of basically Shadow Visions, which is just saying, hey, you put these cards in your deck that are only useful in specific situations. Hey, guess what? Here's 2 more cards that let you pick them up in those specific situations.
Yeah, I think that combined with Elemental as well. Elemental's like a nice help. Just making them so cheap means you can do things you shouldn't be allowed to do that turn anyway, combined with just fishing out the exact card you need. But yeah, it's definitely a fun deck. I enjoy watching it at the very least. It's always interesting to see. I think I always prefer to watch the Priest struggle and see how they play. No, you know what I mean? Like, I prefer the Priest to have, like...
I enjoy Misery, Raven, 2017.
Subtle, all the years before that. But you know what I mean? Like, I enjoy seeing how Priest works with an awkward hand or a bad situation as opposed to, yeah, I got it, dead. You know, I kind of like the fun interactions that you have to think about, like you said, for the opposite side, for the Priest opponent.
Yeah, that makes sense. But we are going to see the Paladin come up against it here as they are ready to go what could be potentially the decider in this series if Best Mama is able to take it down. It's going to be Dragon Priest in the end, and not the Silence Priest we were talking about. Paladin, no massive clues just yet. Finger being in the opening hand means that there is at least some nod towards aggression from Revenge CCS and Malaysia, but we've seen basically every combination of cards under the sun these days, and just having Finger in your deck does not mean that you are not also playing Curator or Equality or Doomsayer or God knows what else at this point.
Yeah, and a point to note as well, all that talk about Divine Spirit and Inner Fire could be possible in Dragon Priest, because we have seen some players bring it now and again, even if it's just in a Fire, but sometimes we've actually seen both, because you still might run, or quite well run for Shadow Visions, for example, in this list. So if you can just squeeze you and say 1 in a Fire, 1 Divine Spirit, that's potentially 4 in the deck, which can then, with cards already that are kind of out of control in terms of health, like Twilight Drake, can just steal a game out of nowhere, which we saw a couple of weeks ago.
Yep. But again, the Paladin's job in this matchup, similar to the game we cast previously where it was Paladin versus Shaman, is Paladin can outvalue a lot of decks. The Spirit Echo Shaman is not one of them, and Dragon Priest is for sure not one of them. Dragon Priest has lost a lot of its tricks in the new expansion. It has not lost the ability to just generate near infinite value from the various Discover cards just over and over and over again.
Yeah, and I feel like especially against Paladin, Dragonfire Potion is huge. Yeah. Like, it pretty much just wipes the board unless there's Ragnaros down. You know, you just... Spike Ridge Steed maybe is one other minion I can think of. Well, effect I can think of. Other than that, you are just clearing that board regardless of whether they're Murlocs, whether they're, you know, Tarium cards or anything like that. You just clear it up quite nicely, especially when you hit it on curve on 6 against an aggressive opening.
Radiant Elemental coined out. Little bit curious. Definitely opens up some avenues with top decks here. If, having played the Radiant Elemental already, if he starts getting Power Word Shields, he can then pair them in the same turn as the Shadow Word Pain if he goes along that lines. But I understand the idea of wanting to get a minion on board preemptively to start fighting against Murlocs, but the only Murloc this really contests nicely is Hydrologist. And if you're going to Shadow Word Pain anyway, then you could have just Shadow Word Pain just solo on the next turn anyway, right? So I guess what this is saying is, okay, if my opponent plays Hydrologist, I can just trade into it and heal. If he plays another Murloc that I can't deal with, I can then just use Shadow Word Pain instead and prevent the threat of Murloc War Leader coming down and getting value immediately. So this is the most flexible line that you can take in terms of reacting to the early development of Murloc. So I'm just not sure if it's worth potentially throwing away the coin like that.
Yeah, what this does is it means that the Nether Spike comes down almost all the time as well, and you don't have anything between turn 2 and 6 here yet, whereas there's, you know, enough dragons you could discover that help fill out that Twilight Drake, for example, even Operative as a good option. Powered Shield, though, for 0 mana. Nice. It's gonna draw a card, make the trade even, I say less significant. There's still True Silver Champion that can kill it off after that trade, but also 1 mana away from that, and there's no coin, as we've just seen, you know, France actually end up on the coin, and that is a good discovery.
And there are the 3 dragons currently in Hearthstone.
Yes, Twilight Drake.
I'm aware that's not actually the case. I'm just saying that's kind of what.
Thottle was incorrect, everyone. Remember, he thinks there are only 3 dragons in the set. How bad is he?
I hate you, Raven.
I'd learn the game, so. There's at least 4.
Confirmed.
Okay, not many options actually for revenge, regardless of what Liadrin says. Although that is how you Stonehill Defender most of the time. Is there any reason you wouldn't pick Tyrion here? Surely not, right?
I mean, I would rather have Tarims than Tyrions in this matchup over and over again. Just, you know, generally, they will... The Priest will have trouble struggling with the amount of small minions that you can generate, but they are going to be slamming a 5/6, a 4/8 over and over again, these huge statted minions. So Tarim is more useful to be able to break those kind of board states over and over again. But you're not taking Stonehill just on the off chance that you then rebuy it into the Tarim. No, I'm not a believer, Raven.
Okay. Good to know.
I'm fine with like trying to discover a specific dragon because there's only 3 of them in the game, of course. So
of course. Yeah. Okay, well there's this Tyrion number 2 lining up nicely next to his non-golden friend and mere image of himself. It's gonna be a while off that though. Stonehill is going to trade nicely into the Elemental, and that's the key, right? You don't care about Nether Spite, of course. Getting the Elemental off the board greatly reduces the kind of shenanigans that Priest can do, even though, speaking of shenanigans, we actually see Lyra available in the future turns. And this is what I was saying earlier about sometimes Dragon Priest can get you with that Divine Spirit Inner Fire. They don't even have to put it in their deck some of the time. They just get it.
Right. This is a big whiff, though, for Best Marmot, and it's you know, it comes back to that early game coin decision. I mean, the early game coin decision is why he's so comfortably in control of the board right now. Let's, you know, no two ways about it. But the early game coin decision has meant that he's had a 1/3 on the board for a couple of extra turns instead of this turn potentially being able to coin a 5-drop. So it's worth going back and looking at it as to whether that was worth it. I definitely understand the game plan of saying, okay, I'm going to get this 2/3 out on the board first so I can trade into your Hydrologist, for example, and then I'm just going to curve out from there. But this is the big period where Dragon Priest really struggles. Now that the Twilight Guardians and whatever else have gone away, it's typically turn 3 to 5 that are a bit awkward, and then at 5, the Draconid Operatives start to come in. So holding the coin for around that period of the game is usually the most beneficial in my experience for Dragon Priest. And you can see the sacrifice that had to be made there as it was just a complete whiff on his 4-mana turn.
Yeah, and a really nice power turn for Malaysia. The Rock Pool along with the Hydrologist plus the Secret. If wanted, you can hold on to this Secret ready for a Tyrion to go triple Tyrion this game. But I wouldn't even mind the secret down now, to be honest. You're going to get value from these Murlocs. If there's any type of clears or anything next turn, then fine. If there's not, you have Tarim, which is a great card to bounce.
Yep.
So I do like this. At worst, you get Rock Pool or Hydrologist value. If you get Hydrologist, pick Kodo again. Job done.
I agree basically for the reason that you just stated, whereas these minions are not dying this turn. Your opponent is playing a Draconid Operative this turn. That's what happens. It just is. Like, memes aside, right, of like people say X deck always has X on turn Y, right? Like, they actually do always have Operative because there's Nether Spite as well, right? If they've played a Nether Spite that game, they're picking Operative every time off that card. So with ridiculous consistency, they're playing an Operative on turn 5.
Especially when you've seen a curve like this pass.
Right.
You know, the curve's high.
So if that happens, this Getaway Kodo is then in play for next turn when Tarim is likely coming down. And an extra Tarim, as I mentioned beforehand, is exactly what you're looking for in this matchup.
Yeah, really like this setup. And now, looks like Revenge is in such a strong position. There's Tarim to be able to deal with almost anything that comes out. And then Tyrion, probably a second Tarim. Still got a Drake as well for just some power boost later on.
I will take one true silver champion, please. Yeah. I'm not sure about Spike Ridge. I don't know. It's a fantastic card. Definitely no doubt about it, but True Silver just seems to be slightly quicker, slightly more efficient, maybe just able to deal with the kind of minions you're going to be facing up against just a little bit better. Deals, for example, with this board state completely right now, if you needed to take care of this. I mean, something from France's perspective, something might be trading into that into the Draconid Operative this turn. Then if there's a 3-2 remaining on the board after a value trade into the Historian, True Silver can come down and take care of that quite nicely, but they know that this board can get cleared if Malaysia want it to be, right? So they're not going to be landing Spike Ridge Steed anytime soon. Like, even just facing down the trades as they see them, they know that the board is getting taken down. So Spike Ridge definitely seems a little bit ambitious to me.
Okay, so it's going to be Stonehill. This Discovery is not fantastic. 9 mana 5/5. Not the best card in the game. Ascended Shieldmaster probably the pick just because it's solid. Oh, okay. Lord of the Arena. Going to go for slightly more aggressive route. Interesting there, though. I think Tarim was pretty good. You can trade the weapon into the 3-3 and the 3-3 into the 1-3 before the Tarim. And clear the whole board, keep all your minions alive, develop the Tarim, and then if it dies, you've got Getaway Kodo. I suppose my only worry here is Getaway Kodo on the Aldor just isn't as shiny as Stonehill or Tarim. I mean, okay, I guess.
Yeah, I guess he's worried about it wasn't the highest value Tarim he could make, and that's all fine and dandy to say, okay, I'll make a fairly low value Tarim here, and then my opponent has to deal with it, and then I get it back, but he doesn't have to Shadow of Pain or Bookworm the Tarim. He can play around Getaway Kodo, especially now he has a bit of extra information as to what the secrets are, and just point one of those at something else. So it might just be the position where Malaysia just didn't really want to expose their one and only potentially Sunkeeper this game for such low value. And this play, honestly, it's hard to argue with, right? Like the board state that they've made here looks just fine to me.
Yeah, I guess anything that actually gets removed here is good for Getaway Kodo, even in a roundabout way. Rockpool is lowest value, I would say, with only the Hydrologist available at the moment.
If AoE hits, what is it? It's the Hydrologist, right? That was played first?
Yep.
Okay.
It's going to be the Rockpool sniped off, so Best Marmot playing around Getaway Kodo as best as he can. But this does mean it can be buffed again, and on time for a Megasaur draw.
No value trade this time for the Sunkeeper Tarim. Last turn there was a value trade available, and then kind of the heal Tarim, if you want to look at it that way, where you do it after a trade to bring it back up to a 3-3. This turn it would just be a clean trade into the 3-6 or the 3-3 as it would be, so any play that he makes this turn is a little bit off curve. Nothing is ideal, so it looks like the Megasaur turn just looks that little bit more promising.
Options are Wind Fury. Do you take +3 attack just to run the Hydrologist into the 3-6? I think so. Could take Wind Fury, but it's only 8 damage this turn.
Yeah.
Whereas this is much nicer.
Yeah, clean trade looks ideal to me. Damage being pushed through as best he can, but still, Primordial Drake into Primordial Drake is coming up very soon, so there is a big potential to make a wall here, and these might be the kind of turns that Malaysia are holding on to their Sunkeeper Tarim for, to be able to deal with those big walls that come into play, and they know there is at least one operative card in hand. They don't know it's a Spike Ridge Steed, but they know it's another potential high-value big minion from their own deck. So the longer they wait, the longer they can deal with situations without pulling the ultimate kill switch, which is the Tarium, then the better that's going to work out for them in the long run.
Yeah, and they've got the juice to be able to as well. Got 2 Tyrians for a start. Like, just one is going to be really good on a board you're already ahead. Here comes the Dragonfire Potion. Clears the board quite nicely. But now it's just going to be Tyrion into Tyrion, potentially, based on how quick they can swing that weapon. You know, they can just chain big guys now. Is there any reason not to play the Tyrion this turn?
Well, there is. There's always reasons, there's always considerations. They haven't really seen any of the big target removals come out yet, so they're probably confident that this turn, if they just play Tyrion, will give an initial tempo swing back over to France, right? They expect it to get deathed. They're also okay with that because it's not even really that much of a tempo loss. Yes, your 8-mana card gets eaten by a 3-mana card. You also get a 5/3 weapon out of it, which can do a lot of work in terms of making sure that you stabilize tempo, right? You don't fall too far behind. So I don't think there was really any other particularly appealing play. You could have gone just Hero Power Tarium, but considering how greedy they have been with that card this entire game, that just wouldn't have been consistent. So just Tyrion ends up being the only possible play.
Yeah, the backup play for the second Tyrion or the Primordial Drake is looking really good anyway as an absolute worst case scenario. We can see that this Tyrion can be cleared up by the Shadow Word Death with either the Lyra combined with it, or maybe just something else actually, because if you Lyra Death, you draw a card, kind of. But then you know the Lyra is just going to die.
Yeah.
So definitely not worth it on that end. Maybe Hero Power into Cabal, Talon Priest, into the Death would be okay. Then you put 2 minions on the board.
Wait, what are you hero powering? You're a priest.
Oh. Oh my. Okay, forgive me on that one. I was looking at Spike Ridge.
Bedtime for Raven,
Yeah, I was looking at Spike Ridge and was like, oh yeah, you normally want to hero power Spike Ridge that next turn. I was
so
like, oh
confused,
my God.
like right at the start of that sentence. Like the very.
I like the way you didn't stop me either.
Why not? I wondered where you were going.
He must be onto something.
Yeah, because I was like, okay, why is he starting with hero power? That's a bizarre choice. I'll see how this develops.
Okay, well,
it developed into insanity is how it developed.
I did take a trip into insanity just for a second there. I am back. I've returned and I'm still relatively sane. Thank God on that one. So yeah, hero power probably wouldn't do too much combined with the Talon Priest. But Spike Ridge on this side of the board going for the Tyrion is going to be pretty nice. And yeah, Best Mama just giving Malaysia they didn't give them the trade, they didn't know Spike Ridge was available, but just allowing the Tyrion to just attack was pretty huge there, just gaining more and more value. Tyrion being an 8/8 now, still going to drop that weapon, and certainly Draconid Operative doesn't look that powerful on this board.
No, and France definitely would have considered the Spike Ridge Steed. They would have known how devastating a punish that was coming out. But remember, they discovered the one copy from Malaysia's deck only a few turns ago at this point. It's turn 9 now. They played it on turn 5, so it was 3 turns ago. They've been playing the Primordial Drake on turn 8. So they know, double Spike Ridge Steed isn't a guarantee. Sometimes there's only one. If it is only one, that card wasn't in their hand 3 turns ago. So they just took the risk because, we were sat there talking about potential plays with Shadow Word Death. And some of us with more success than others. But the key point is that there wasn't really a nice looking play with Shadow Word Death that turn, right? So they were trying to do something else to put them in a stronger position to Shadow Word Death with tempo on the following turn.
The gates are open.
The gates are open. A lot of the rain is going to come down now. We saw as well on the Discover from the Operative that there's still Vilefin, there's still a War Leader, there's still a Hydrologist in the deck as well. So this Finger has plenty of Murlocs left to pull. Sometimes you get this late in a game and Finger runs a little bit dry. Finger's got like all the Murlocs in the world left. We've not really seen a lot of big Murloc opening outside that first Hydrologist and Rock pull from Revenge.
So that was the Discover, Vilefin, Hydro, and War Leader?
Yep.
Okay, I didn't see it, so good to know. Hydrologist definitely seems to be the pick out of those 3. But not quite as high value overall as the options he was offered first time around. The choice between True Silver and Spike Ridge Steed, which I'm still a little bit concerned about. This Spike Ridge Steed is still in hand right now, and it feels...
If he had Paladin Hero Power, it'd be fine.
It would. It feels like True Silver might have got a bit more work done this game, but we can go back and take a look at that after the game, I guess. But
I mean, there's a turn I can see. Twilight Drake into Spy Ridge, make the biggest minion ever made. Unless you're playing Silence Priest.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So it'd start off as a 4/9 and gain 6 extra health, so 6/15. Is that right?
That's pretty good code. It's going to do it as well. The problem is, we've talked a long time about a certain card in Revenge's hand, and Tarim could be worthwhile here. I think you just do, right?
Yeah,
he's too good.
He's
to take
just
down 15.
taking a moment here. I think Malaysia, the same thing just occurred to them as occurred to me, is that you have the Kodo for the 2/6 afterwards. So just kind of debating, like, is there any world where like killing the 6/15 normally and then just Kodoing to push through is any better? Which the very quick answer is no. Of course, that's stupid. Shut up.
Yes, you're actually one off killing it anyway, so you'd have to do something extra, consecrate. You have to do Drake, which then just makes it even worse.
Yeah.
So, you know, if this turn is full trade, consecrate, and then Kodo, you've kind of lost out there, I feel, at some point. Whereas this, not so much health on that Drake anymore.
No, that is a 12 damage Sunkeeper Tarim.
Yeah, can still clear off the 2/6 afterwards anyway. Can swing in with the weapon, put the 2/3/3s into the 2/6, and still push for 3 this turn. So a very, very solid turn here for Malaysia. And this is what we talked about earlier, right? Like, this is the potential power of Tarim. Even though it was only on 1 minion, it just swung the board and pushed so much damage. Dragonfire Potion, though. Sol's pulling the Dragonfire Potion face. I'll get him to pull that afterwards when we're actually on camera. It's just good versus Paladin, right?
Yeah.
Nothing ever survives.
It's the last big AoE though, most likely. These primarily Dragon Priest doesn't play any other AoE apart from the Dragonfire Potions.
That's what Lyra's for.
You don't often see Pyromancer. You even rarely see Holy Novas and stuff these days anyway. So it's the deck that's often the lightest on AoE because it's the heaviest on minions, more or less, to be able to develop that way. So after Primordial Drake and 1 Primordial Drake, 2 Dragonfire Potions have been used. Malaysia now have the signal to just commit as heavily as they want right now. They have a hand that's got 1 very nice card in it for committing very heavily to the board.
Kodo.
No.
Oh.
Paladin Hero Power.
Ah.
No. Finger the Flying Star.
That is a pretty good card.
Yeah.
As we said earlier, there are a lot of Murlocs still in the deck for Revenge, so Finger's going to be pulling Murlocs for days if it can continue to get trades away. And with the War Leader as well, it could buff it, get itself buffed to 4, which means that the Pain's going to not be very effective versus Finger, so potentially at least 2 attacks coming in. If there's any minions to attack into, we'll see. Because currently Malaysia is still just dominating the board as and when with what they have available, sorry.
Yeah, before we get down to any of those shenanigans, though, it's time for Tyrion number 2, and I think the little grimace on Best Marmot's face kind of sums it all up there. They were hoping there wasn't something too explosive coming off this this early Stonehill Defender, which they would have been tracking all the way here, but get the bad news that it is Tyrion number 2.
Can proc the Divine Shield with the 1/1 though.
It's true.
The Potion of Madness. Doesn't sound like a lot, but it helps, especially when you don't have a Shadow of Death to answer it correctly.
What about the Primordial Drake plan that they tried last time? That seems to be rather promising again.
I must consider.
That's not too bad. It's not too bad. Oh, Primordial Drake into the Kodo. I like it. Being able to replay a Drake after it's been killed is pretty powerful.
I agree. And they know that Steed has been played already, that they tried this plan the first time and got punished immensely, but yeah, they say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. But
This is slightly different.
France are going to try and prove that wrong right here.
Do you think, although there's a Lyra in hand, of course, was there ever a reason to proc the shield first on the Tyrion to put the Tyrion in death range of the trading with the dragon? It does give Malaysia a swing of the weapon.
Potion of Madness, the 1/1,
Yeah.
in to clear the shield and then deal 2 damage with the Drake Battlecry. I can see the merit of it, but I think you presented the right counter-argument yourself, which is you have Lyra in hand, and Potion of Madness is always going to have a target against Paladin. It's not like you're playing against...
You can play around it by not pressing hero power.
You can, yeah. You can also play around it by being a priest and not being able to summon 1/1s on the board.
Pretty good play as far as I'm concerned.
But it's not like using the extreme example, it's not like you're playing against Quest Rogue, where if you've got Potion of Madness in your hand, you better use it, because at some point there are going to be no targets left, right? It's against Paladin, you're always going to find some kind of value out of it, and it feels like the value train is actually running out. I said that it was very difficult to outvalue Dragon Priest, but Paladin is having a good old go here off the back of their second Tyrion Fordring so far.
Yeah, Lyra plus Elemental, then Potion, though, seems pretty good here. I think you do have to go for it now, by the way. You could play double Talon Priest, which is okay. I feel like you need to make something big happen.
Well, the big question here is, what are you doing with your Shadower Pains? After you go Radiant Elemental, Lyra, and then Potion of Madness, and then what? Like Shadower
Pain the 1/1.
Shadower Pain the 1/1 before you trade it in. It doesn't look pretty.
But then you draw like really good cards, like another Dragonfire.
Do you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct play.
Good to know.
Now the Ashbringer, number 2, is equipped. Well, number 2 of the game, should I say. But suddenly, War Leader, Megasaur, Finger trade. This is looking potentially brutal here. Although, also kind of awkward. Oh no, you can War Leader first, it's fine.
Should I?
Yeah, he can War Leader first, Megasaur afterwards, if he really wants to go down that line.
To get a kill on anything? Can't actually kill anything with Finger, unless he plays Conk.
He can consecrate first if he really wants to. He can Primordial Drake first if he really wants to, but none of those
just narrows down the
really
options,
wonderful.
right?
Yeah.
So more than likely going to see War Leader come down now, buff the Finger a little bit so he can take care of one of these Talon Priests, bring out some additional Murlocs. There's still room to play the Inquisitor, Hero Power, and Megasaur this turn. Which is kind of nuts.
See what gets pulled out now, because 2 of the Murlocs that we saw off the Discover were that Inquisitor and one of those War Leaders that we've seen. And yeah, there is still a full old package of Murlocs in that deck that just have not been drawn this game. How is this for a board state, though, Raven?
It's not bad, is my official analysis.
Okay.
Not bad. I think what's... I talk a lot about when players kind of draw their deck the wrong way round.
Delicious, delicious health.
I feel like this deck was drawn the wrong way round in most matchups. In this one, the fact that there was such a slow, control-y start actually benefited Malaysia to a large extent because they could afford it.
Right.
And then there's so much additional power from these Murlocs late on. We've already seen 2 Tyrions. We've seen the Tarim as well. I told you Lyra was good.
Can't play it, though. Unlucky. Potion of Madness. He's going to rip all of those Murlocs out of his Priest deck by trading this in. Shadow of Death has got a target as well, but there is only enough of a discount to play either a Pain or a Death this turn. The 5 health of the Finger means that it has to go into the Megasaur if he wants to kill it, which means Shadow of Pain probably ends up being a better choice. Deathing the Megasaur after you've already put 2 damage into it doesn't exactly seem ideal. So yeah, Shadow of Pain on the 1/6 seems more favorable. Embrace the shadows. Circle of Healing, go. Unlucky.
Close. Mind Games is not close, but still, it's a Priest card. I see the double trade into the Megasaur. Certainly this board doesn't look as threatening as it did. Yes, Ashbringer's still down.
Still looks pretty scary.
Yeah, but when you remove War Leader, you remove Finger, it's a lot more manageable. There is the Master Spell for next turn, which is going to take down, or at least reduce down, these Murlocs, but it's probably still not going to be enough. Kodo looking pretty nice to clear up this Elemental, and a clean trade into the Lyra as well with the weapon.
Yeah, he's got a quality Drake combo now, so even if by some miracle he does lose the board, there's just no way that it's going to stick around.
What if 2 of the cards are 2 Mind Blasts from Lyra? Got to think about these things, Saul.
It's true.
Options.
I just don't see any other play. Kodo and hit the Lyra just seems the most reasonable. He could choose, if he wants to preserve some of his health here and take the value trade with the Tidecaller into the Lyra instead and swing the weapon to face. There is definitely nothing wrong with that play either. It's a little bit timid, sure, but if you do want to play around those ridiculous outcomes, there is Holy Fire as well as Mind Blast that can punish you for this kind of situation. Then you
also,
can go ahead and do it.
Is there any card you really bothered about dealing the extra damage to the Murloc? If it traded, it would.
Holy Nova?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess. Only Holy Nova, right? Unless there was Excavate Evil or something. Oh, no. No, there can't be. Too much wild. Shadow Visions will allow Best Marmot to fish for a card.
Both natural Dragonfires have been used, though, I think, right? So I don't think he can even fish one out. I don't think one of the earlier ones was from Shadow Visions, so I believe he is out of large-scale AoE. He does have the Master Spell, though, which takes a good chunk of stats off the board. It's 4 attack off the Tide Cooler alone, plus a bunch of health from all the rest of the Murlocs. So a pretty high-value Master Spell as far as Master Spell goes, which is not particularly far at the best of times.
Definitely not. There is a Nether Spike now, so a potential second Primordial Drake could lead into some issues here for Revenge. Mind games into a 2-2.
Just threw it out, held his arms up to the heavens.
Hope for the best.
Said, bless me, with a third Tyrion that is somehow in my opponent's deck.
Looking for like Ragnaros or something?
I guess, Light Lord, yeah.
It's a big ass,
Light
isn't
Lord, it? Curator. There's still probably a couple of chunky dudes in there that could have got the work done.
True. Definitely a long shot, especially when you use that Twilight Drake to drop down.
Yeah. 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14 Consecration, meaning they are 1 off right now. So it would have taken an extra card to represent lethal, but at this point, as Malaysia, what exactly are you scared of? Let's just get through the damage as much as we can. Just going to Primordial Drake away a decent chunk of his own board, just to develop the threat of a 4-8 on the board, because why on earth not?
Yeah, pretty reasonable. This 4-8 is almost got 0 way for it to be dealt with. I can't actually think of a way that Priest could deal with this card.
Yeah, I mean, there's some Lyra memes in hand, right? So that they could just like snap Mind Control it in this point, but they know if there's a Mind Control, a Quality Consecrate deals with it, the minions push through, so they've set up lethal through Mind Control anyway. It's very, very hard in this position to come up with a plan against every single Priest card in the game. So what your mind does is generally channel onto some of the biggest effects that can be dangerous against you and make sure that you beat those. Mind Control is definitely one of the big assets that they could have to try and get them out of this. If Mind Control happens, the game is over in Malaysia's favor. So it's a good setup from them.
Yep, nothing too much to fear here. And it looks like Malaysia's going to be able to even this series up versus France. I had a bit of a rough beginning, but definitely fighting back here. Best Marmot just going through the motions here, but he's going to be probably looking at that concede button pretty quick as soon as he sees this equality and the consecrate as well. Going to add up even the second of consecrate, sorry, just for fun. Yeah, it's going to be evened up now. 7 damage from the minions. Well played from Beast Marmot. And Malaysia even this series up at 2-2. We are going to be going to the ace game to decide who is going to take this match and progress throughout their group. And as we said earlier, one of the more hard-fought groups of we don't really know who's doing that well. We know Canada is at the top, but then everyone else is brawling it out in the middle.
Yeah, it's basically just a group of teams and the teams that Canada have beaten and Canada. That is basically the group right now.
More or less, more or less. So we'll have a look at what classes are going to be left for this ace match. I didn't quite recall what the ace class was for these players, but we'll find out right now. It's going to be Revenge again on the Priest now. And Talk, all the way from the beginning winning his game with the Warrior, it's going to be flicking onto the Mage for this. So Mage versus Priest. This was a rough one. He could have picked Druid instead to line up against Priest or Warlock.
Yes. So he knows Priest is getting played, which means, I mean, to be fair, the Druid doesn't really have great matchups against Priest across the board. If it's Silence Priest and it's Jade Druid, for example, that's an absolute beating. If it's some kind of anti-aggro Priest with Pyromancers, etc., and it's an aggro Druid, then that's not a great matchup for you either. So there's a lot of possibilities that you can line up there. If you're tunneling on the fact that it's going to be the Druid coming out and not the Warlock, which you probably are, every time we've seen this situation where the Warlock is part of the ace pick, the Warlock has not been chosen. Yeah. The only times we've seen Warlock being played is when it's actually in one of the main series games. So since you're tunneling on Druid, I think it's fairly reasonable that you can pick the main.
Yeah, I think so. And especially just because, well, the Priest.
Yeah, sorry,
the Priest is like, especially because the more and more we've seen the Silence Priest be more popular, which means the Mage actually has a much better chance versus the Silence Priest because they don't normally run Priest of the Feast and can afford to wait like this sort of Control Priest kind of does. Because the main issue with the Mage versus Priest is they hang on till Priest of the Feast, and then as soon as you Alex Raza or make any even like aggressive look towards them, they just play Priest of the Feast, heal back up to full, and then there is no way you can beat the burn.
And even now, with the advent of Secret Mage really coming in, it's just like it's more of a robust mid-game deck with a few extra minions, so you can really just tempo out against the Priest that way and not rely purely on the burn strategy. But it looks like with Ice Barrier in the deck, it is going to be the Gunter-style Mage coming up against Silence Priest here. So as you said, slightly better matchup than many of the Control Priests that we've seen in the Un'Goro meta, primarily because there's no Binding Heals, there's no Priest of the Feast, there's none of those tools that we've seen in other decks, which means you can set up a win condition for yourself. And there is that Sorcerer's Apprentice that you talked quite extensively about in the previous Mage game as well. Yeah,
it's just, from what I played with it at least, it's just a really good card. I know we knew this beforehand. This is not news to anyone who's played Hearthstone before, but it actually just opens up crazy stuff with Glyph. It's a huge early threat that if it gets to stick, it's just a continued problem for your opponent. And it's be interesting to see what they cut from it, as Cabal Courier is in the deck, as we can see in the hand there for Talk. But it's definitely interesting how these mage lists keeps getting chopped and changed around. As you said, there's even the Secret Mage, there's this mage, there's a mage that's in between. So it's good to see how this develops. But Cabal Courier, I do feel, is one of the weaker cards in the list. But he's going to be there for Talk.
So, Coin, Innovate, Chillwind Yeti for Malaysia, 2014 plays, coming at you hot.
Yes, that's going to be a bit of a problem here. Although the one benefit that Mage does have is they, one, potentially run Meteor. Huge.
Yep.
Or Polymorph, or both. And then even Frostbolts can do a mixed job of reducing the health of the minion down, which means, Divine Spirit not as powerful, like we talked about earlier. Or it can just stop a deadly attack coming in for maybe that one turn you need to continue freezing the board. It's going to be a tough one, though.
So is it just Silence and Heal this turn? Just so you play around easy removal from your opponent with Frostbolts. Looking that way is what Malaysia favor. Then, because you really want this thing to stick on the board, right? You might have been tempted to say, hey, Radiant Elemental and trade that way, but then you're in a position where one of your minions gets answered. Do you want to be Talon Priesting your Radiant Elemental, or would you rather be Talon Priesting your Ancient Watcher? That's the question you've got to ask yourself. Revenge CCS says we'd rather have the Talon Priest coming down on Ancient Watcher, and we'll just go through this way.
Yeah, and this is the thing with the Sorcerer's Apprentice as well. It had to be dealt with. It wasn't something that could be forgotten about or left. Had to be dealt with 100% of the time. Whereas Cabal Courier gets a Flame Geyser, not too amazing. The 1-2 not going to do too much work in this matchup specifically. Talon Priest coming down on the Watcher. Now we might see the minion get ignored and go face.
What's the punish for going face here? There isn't really a good one, right? Like Fireball and Trade has to do the same thing into the 4-7. There's no real relevance in terms of the 3-4, so I think that's just 4 free damage. Well identified from Malaysia.
Yeah, I like it.
And they took it.
Yeah, and the onus really is on the mage to stop this sort of thing happening, as opposed to the priest trying to, oh, how do I play around this or play around this? Most of the time, the priest just goes for it, and then they have to, hope that there's no meteor or, no polymorph available at that specific time. Double Acolyte. Not terrible, especially after you've seen the Frostbolts.
One Frostbolt and a Flame Geyser got used.
Yeah.
Right? So. Still, it's the opponent's secret valet turn on turn 5. That is one of the most common things you see from any mage deck these days. So playing an Acolyte into that kind of turn feels pretty bad. Your alternative line is some kind of like Radiant Elemental Shadow Visions play, though, which again, you're just putting a 2-3 on board into your opponent's secret valet turn. So.
Yeah, I think I like this because you draw a card and the Talon Priest kills the valet anyway, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of retain the board regardless, draw a card, and you have 2 Acolytes. Like, it's always nice to get 2 to 3 draws off an Acolyte, but even going 1 for 1 is reasonable enough. With this deck specifically, you are trying to hard cycle to actually get into those Divine Spirits in a 5 turns.
Yeah, I agree. Ping going to come out to face in. Not a particularly efficient turn for France, and these are the kind of turns where the Gunter Mage generally does slow down just a little bit. They don't really have great tools to fill these kind of turn 4 to turn 7 plays. When I say that a deck's turn 5 is quite often playing a secret and a 2-3. You can tell, like, oh, that's a turn I'm really happy with. That's not exactly spectacular compared to what a lot of other decks can do on turn 5.
That's why one of the cards we've been seeing in these mage lists along the lines of Elise, just a great 5-drop, fills out a bit of that middle game and puts tons of value in the deck. So it kind of ticks all the boxes that this mage deck normally misses for want of one card. So do see it used now and again. It might still be in Talk's list, but we're just not seeing it available quite yet. Humongous Gentleman Leaf, sir, is going to hit the board and be that was actually a great pickup for Revenge. This opens up options for Shambler. Suddenly Shadow Visions with Elemental next turn can fish for more buffs, and this is when Revenge is going to try and snowball out of control, and it's all going to be down to Talk to be able to deal with this.
Yeah, if he Shadow Visions now, he can potentially use the spell that he visions into and a Shambler next turn. For example, make 2 4/16s if he goes that way, but he's going to choose to use the heal. Find the extra time. He might also just be waiting, trying to get the odds as heavily in his favor for a good Shadow Visions as he can. It's also the consideration for Elise, if he's got that in his deck, to be trying to go for a value game. But I wouldn't really say he's dealing with a value-based matchup right now. This is a
kill him,
get some inner fires on your gentleman and hit them in the face game.
Yeah. Yep, 100%, because it's going to sound really weird, but either the mage has it or they don't, right? They either have the polymorph for this minion, or they don't. If they don't, you win. If they do, well, you just move on to the next go, right? And like we said, kind of like a dance, but this dance is a little bit less delicate, more of a barroom, slightly drunken dance than anything else, because you just can go all in with a minion, and a lot of the time they don't have the answer. The maximum responses are normally 1 meteor or 1 polymorph max.
Is that what you do in a drunken barroom?
Go all in.
You just go all in?
Yeah, always.
Okay.
Get that jukebox on.
That makes sense, honestly. I have no issue with the analogy. It seems valid.
There you go. See. Second 4/8 now onto the board. And silence available. Huge pickup there. Suddenly 4 damage out of nowhere. And 4 damage that Talk would rather not be dealing with at this point.
Yeah, and it means that having waited before this Shadow Visions, he's been able to get that silence through before any buffs came down on the Razor Leaf, which is crucial, because buffing the Razor Leaf before it got silenced was definitely valid because you had the Shambler in hand to turn those stats into. But if you can get that silence down on it first, then all the better.
Yeah, now I said, not only Mage has an answer, maximum. Now they need 2. And they probably just don't have it most of the time. It's a huge, huge problem here. Frostbolt can buy some time, but without the minions already being buffed up, whichever one you Frostbolt, it's like, okay, I'll just buff the other one. Like, it's just not a problem.
Peep the sweet, sweet meteor positioning. It just makes
what
me happy.
do you do?
It just gives me such a warm feeling.
You love your positioning, don't
I do, yeah. That's why I've always liked Zoo so much. That's why I've always liked casting Zoo games as well. Like,
do you like Shaman a lot?
I like Shaman a lot.
Never heard of it.
Okay.
Violence Portal might just be the turn here. Just to try and get something. Flame Strike deals with 2 of the annoying minions, clears off the Acolyte, so there is a valid point here. You only give your opponent 1 draw. And greatly reduce the Divine Spirits on both big minions, so that is huge. But there just needs to be a strong, strong follow-up here for Talk, or it's going to be game over regardless.
Yeah, this does give him, I think, the best chance of digging through this board over the course of 2 or 3 turns. Flame Strike did the most damage that turn of anything that he could do, and as you said, as we've mentioned before, I think, like, you have to do weird things against this deck where, you know, using removal spells just to lower the health of a minion or suiciding your minions into theirs just to cut the health in half, because, you know, essentially when you're scared of Divine Spirit, every point of damage that you do is doubled, essentially, right? Because that is their ability to double any remaining health. So Flame Strike made a lot of sense there just to stop any big Divine Spirit in a fire combo coming down and doing massive amounts of damage. And they can now start to just about pick this board apart turn by turn now.
Yeah, turn by turn, they're going to have to hurry up, though, because there is only 11 health for France. There is no Alexstrasza for a refill back up to 15 after turn 9. And the silence on the Humongous Razor Leaf was just huge. If there was just 1 minion to deal with, Frostbolt, forget about it. But there isn't. There's 2, and at any time, both of them can be buffed up to a large amount to potentially just proc the block next turn. And now the second Razor Leaf, although no silence available, combined with Shadow Visions, means that you can probably fish for a Purify or fish for, you know, you have so many targets now. There's the buffs for the minions you've already got. and then the silences that are left for the new Razor Leaf.
Yeah. One mana off, disappointingly, from a decent Firelands turn. We talked a little bit about Firelands stats in terms of charge minions with Falcone, but I think one of the most relevant stats from Firelands Portal is the fact that there are 11 taunt minions that you can get out of 69, which is,
for example,
like that guy right there. So if you haven't actually ever sat down and done that, you might be surprised at how often the plan of Firelands and I need a taunt actually works out for you. 11 out of 69 is so much higher than I was expecting it to be.
Yeah, I've said it quite often when, say, like in my stream, for example, and people, oh, so lucky when I get it. I'm like, it's actually a pretty reasonable outcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get there.
It's actually a pretty reasonable outcome, but now double Shadow Visions means that Revenge can almost cherry pick what spells it wants from the deck to draw, and well, I say draw, not even draw, create duplicates of, which is why the card's so powerful in itself.
Just sat at a delicious build-your-own ice cream sundae station right now.
Yeah. What toppings does he want? He started off with a nice smooth layer of Divine Spirit. No Shadow Visions. Second topping choice. Could go for the Inner Fire Sprinkles. Or the Purify Cream.
Please don't ever say Purify Cream to me ever again.
It's gone for the Sprinkles instead.
So Divine Spirit Inner Fire makes him a 16/16, but he has no way of connecting that 16/16 to face. If he puts Divine Spirit on the Acolyte, that can get him some additional value that way, but that doesn't seem ideal either. Power Word Shield now makes his Razor Leaf even bigger potentially, but he's going to hold it back and just trade through this way. Doesn't want to overcommit, just doing the necessary that he can so that he's not too exposed to Polymorph, Meteor, that kind of thing. As we've mentioned, Inner Fire is worth its weight in gold in this deck. Against decks that can deal with it, you do not want to play it until they are dead, because once your Inner Fires go down, the rest of your deck quickly tumbles with it.
Yeah, especially, this was just really nice that he could commit to the health and not the attack, because this is now like, what, do I have it? Like, if you think I've...
Yes.
Well, yeah, but if you think I've got it, deal with it.
Right.
If you deal with it, I'll just do the same on a different minion. This is the power of this deck when it's played against, an opponent that can only deal with cards like these a certain amount of times, right?
Yeah, essentially that thing already has 12 attack, right? It dealt with the taunt minion efficiently on the previous turn, where the amount of attack it had didn't really matter. And because the Inner Fire is 0 mana now alongside that Radiant Elemental, it might as well already be sitting there with 12 attack. And when I say it might as well already be sitting there, it's because both teams know right now that that thing is a 12-12. With the amount of deck that's been drawn and the Shadow Visions being cast, France fully respect the fact that that thing is about to get Inner Fired if it's allowed to.
And this is where we see Frostbolt, Fireball. Doesn't even kill the minion, but it stops the attack coming in. But now, oh, hang on, is this still there's still a block proc, right? With the Talon Priest, Power Word Shield?
I think it may have been even without unsilencing the Razor Leaf. Was it 6/8? No, not quite.
No, it would have been short.
Yeah.
Yeah, this Purify.
But it is now.
Purify, winning games. Who would have thought?
Well, not just yet. But looking very, very likely.
The Purify. And this is nice again. Could have gone all in on the Razor Leaf, but now it looks like Revenge is just kind of, spreading the love around a little bit and just creating multiple sources of issues, basically, for Torque and Team France.
Yeah, he's also trying to manipulate the numbers as best as he can to try and pop in the lowest way possible, right? To try and get the ice block popped as fragilely as possible. There's also the fact that if you're turning the attack of your minion in to match its health anyway, you might as well put the extra stats on the minion that has upside as well, right? Like either the Cleric or the Radiant Elemental as actual minions that have huge effects, so... That was actually, even though that seemed like a straightforward turn where it was just, play your cards, pop the block, there was actually a great deal of intricacy as to which minion you wanted to do it on and the ordering of your attacks and so on.
You could always pop the block, but it's how.
Yeah.
And it's that enhancing your turn is what makes you actually a great player. The Razor Leaf here, the second one, is huge as well. There's Purify available.
It's humongous.
So, hey. So it means that, well, whilst not a high priority target on this board, of course, then if it's not dealt with or left alone, boom. Either second block proc or game, because there's just a Purify ready and waiting. Second block gets drawn by the Archaeologist. I believe, was there still an Ice Barrier left?
Well,
I don't remember now.
Who knows? One has been played. It depends whether there is 1 or 2 in the deck. I cannot speak on that.
Yeah, probably 1. With Elise and the Sorcerer's Apprentice as well.
It seems likely. It feels like a 1 barrier list to me, but we don't know. The deck lists are not public, so no one really knows apart from France in this position whether there's another barrier in there.
It's got the texture of a 1 barrier mage deck.
You've got the texture of a 1 barrier mage deck.
That's right, I play 1 barrier in my mage deck. Sounds good.
Told you.
Okay, so I'm going to put that second block. And now is the huge question. Is there anything Torque can do? I'm guessing with this board, the answer is a pretty stern no. And this is the huge problem the mage gets into. There's just not enough answers for the amount of potential threats the priest can put forward.
I will rely on a meme that our casting brothers, Firebat and Zalay, went back to over and over again. Kabbalist Tome into Ice Block Frostbolt. Kabbalist Tome, loop it forever.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sure that's the play that will win this game. Oh, our American friends.
I know.
Well, it's going to discover nothing good. Blizzard? Actually, it's doable for 1 turn. Oh, no. Run the buck in.
They'll play around it. I'm almost certain
I would think so.
I don't think it'll actually make a big difference in terms of the outcome of the game overall.
Actually, don't run the buck in. It'll be funny.
I think they're smart enough to understand that if you guys don't know what we're talking about, if he doesn't suicide his babbling book here, he just loses to Potion of Madness, and I don't think they've seen any Potions of Madness cast this game yet, so they know there's a pretty good chance that this book could come back to bite them if possible.
Yeah, he just wants to cast a spell. Instead, it's just going to smog. It's going to be a lot of time over this turn. I think this time is the thinking about what's the bit after Blizzard. You know, like, what do we do afterwards? Pretty sure Blizzard is getting played this turn because it's how they survive.
Binding Heal.
Ooh.
Hello.
Okay.
So you're saying there's a chance.
Now they discover Kabbalist Tome somehow.
Now
and we'll get there.
Now they don't have to suicide anymore.
Holding that sweet 1/1 damage.
Unfortunately, though, Purified to Silence plus the Potion of Madness or the Inner Fire will end the game regardless. So, and final way, and this is one of the many benefits of the Silence deck versus any kind of control mage, is that freeze effects are basically irrelevant due to the amount of silences they do have available. France crossed their fingers in that position because of the fact that I believe 1 Silence, 1 Purify had already been used. So, and they had good knowledge that the Shadow Visions were used to discover Divine Spirit Inner Fire pieces.
Yep.
So there was a decent chance there were no additional silenced effects available, but it was going to be ambitious nonetheless. The Binding Heal may have given them that extra fraction of hope, but still, Purify #2 was able to end the game with Humongous Razor Leaf #2 alongside it.
Yeah, they had to go for it, and you see the struggles a lot of classes have against this type of priest, and why the priest is even being played at the moment in its silence form above the dragon list, for example, is that they can just dump minions that don't do anything until they need them to do something. So can you spend resources killing minions that are currently doing nothing?
Right.
It's a tough question. And, you know, it looked like France didn't have the answer as Malaysia take the win 3-2 in a very long series there. And they're going to be happy with revenge there, taking the last 2 games, the last one, and then the ace match to finish this one up.
Yeah, great performance by Revenge, but of course, worth mentioning again, this is a team effort, so all the players are in communication at all times, so Revenge would have had a massive amount of collaboration, I'm sure, from his partners to get his way through those series, but still, always feels like a nice personal achievement to be the one with your name next to the green check marks when it comes down to it at the end, and Malaysia, most importantly for them, have picked up a green checkmark on the whole for their country.
Yeah, very important as well. I mean, France, I think, are probably not looking too great now. I know they lost to Canada, and they are a little bit, they're going to be lower in the group as well. I believe we've got Lala Song. Let's see if he messages me about like he did last time. Lala Song, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Oh,
yes,
hey.
I can hear you.
Congratulations on the win. That was a very, very close one indeed. How was that?
Yeah.
How tense was that priest versus mage game, the last one for you guys?
Well, so because the priest game, we have a lot of different options, then different plays, and then we were like, we were making misplays because we couldn't. There are too much plays that, and then we cannot agree on one. I'm sorry, I'm too nervous right now. I think I have you. Oh my god.
No problem at all. I know.
But it was really tense, and we were really happy that we took the win for now.
Yeah. How is the, you said there was a lot of options, a lot of plays with that deck, and I imagine throughout the whole series. How well is your communication as a team? Do you all talk to each other a lot whilst you're playing, or is it more quiet? Do you let whoever's piloting the deck just play it, or?
Well, usually we will discuss the play before roping starts, and then we will let the pilot to decide the play. But when the priest game was game 5, and we all got very nervous, and we were like, yeah, we don't care anymore. We just speak here, there, and then the pilot got confused. That's why we rope every turn, and oh my god! But yeah, luckily we still won it. So.
Yeah, it was good enough in the end. I don't really have too many follow-up questions for you. You clearly just want to get away and celebrate, so we'll let you do that. But congratulations, well played.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
See you again next week. Bye.
So what happened last time? He messed you around last time?
No, so what happened is we had the interview came up, and it wasn't him. It was one of his other teammates.
Okay.
But then they weren't speaking to me, at least in English. So then it got very confusing very quickly.
Nice.
But we can review what happened in this series. But yeah,
wow,
we did
this
actually get
game
Lala
was
Song.
in this series.
Yes.
Wow, that's insane.
Yeah, we did see a Zoo Warlock playing Lakari Fellhound, although it ended up not being enough. There you go. There's Lala Song praying already with the swipe to finish up this game. And I think you see a lot from Malaysia. I think Lala Song kind of sums it up where they just get they've got a lot to prove, I think, actually,
Sure.
the Malaysian team. And, in them doing so well so far is absolutely huge for these guys. And you can see that it's just the relief on winning the match. They even said, we made misplays, we messed up, we were very nervous, but we got there, and that's all that matters. And to be honest, you can mess up a couple of times, you can be nervous. If you win, right? That's all that matters at the end of the day.
It's one of the things I really love about team formats in general, because of the collaborative element, you either get these games where everyone works together really, really well, and there's exceptional play that you can really evangelize about and really try and explain all these brilliant things that are happening. Or there's just kind of these
nightmare.
Or these kind of stupid mistakes where they all get in each other's way and step over each other and all try and talk at the same time, like Lala Song was talking about there. But either way, what that creates is a greater feeling of a world where one team's getting outplayed, right? Whether that's because one team's playing badly or because one team's playing exceptionally or a combination of both, it still gives you this impression that decisions are mattering, right? Skill cap is mattering. The thought process that these players are putting in and their discussion and their skill in the game is making a big difference. And Malaysia here were just able to squeeze over the line with a very comfortable Silence Priest victory over the Gunter Mage.
Yeah, even though that did come to a Purify from the Blizzard with the buff to be able to finish it, even if the game didn't end that turn, both blocks were already gone.
Yeah.
It looked very, very grim indeed for France. So congratulations again to Malaysia, and they can move up under Canada with a 3-0 score themselves. Not quite up to Canada's performance on game record, but a fantastic performance already. Beating down a team like France, for example, is a really good start.
Yeah, you said you felt like maybe they had a lot to prove in this tournament. Well, they are going about it the right way so far. 3-0 is a fantastic record, and I think a couple of their series in previous weeks, I think they've played notably very well. I think that series was a little bit more shaky from them, but what's important is that they had the self-awareness to come out and say, yeah, we made a mistake that game.
Yeah.
We know what's happened. The communication wasn't quite on point. I'm sure they can sharpen that up now going on and really be a huge terror in Stage 2, which is where it looks like more and more that they are heading.
Yeah, I have no doubt about that. But we've got one more match for you today, so don't go anywhere. We'll be back right after this Hearthstone Global Games.
We're almost there. Quiet down, everyone. This is not like any of our previous expeditions. This will be far more ambitious. We're stepping into a land of primordial wonder. Infused with astonishing elemental energies. The plant life here holds very unusual properties. So don't touch anything. And while you may be excited to see the local fauna, you might want to make sure they don't see you. Because their powers of adaptation are devastating. Make no mistake, we will be tested at every turn. But if we stay on our guard, we might just survive. Now then, are you ready? Then let's journey into Ongoro Crater.